My cheating wife asked for an open marriage to justify her affair with my best friend. I left them. I was packing for our annual fishing trip, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. This trip, a long-standing tradition with my closest friends, felt different this year. Normally, it was a group affair with us and our wives, a testament to our inseparable bond since grade school. However, changes were afoot. Kenny had to miss the initial part of the trip due to a business obligation, causing his wife Pam to also delay her participation. Then Don had to cut his trip short for a meeting, leading his wife to stay behind. Once Becky learned that she'd be the only wife on the trip from the start, she opted not to join either. The alteration in plans was a letdown. Our trips were known for strengthening our friendships and spicing up our marriages, filled with laughter and memorable moments. Now it seemed like a shadow of its usual self. Despite my excitement for the trip, I couldn't help but feel a sense of loss, particularly missing the intimate moments with Becky. Yet, the week leading up to the trip, Becky and I shared a passionate connection, a fervor that was both exhausting and deeply cherished. It was a bittersweet prelude to an altered tradition. For most of the year, our intimate life had settled into a routine that could be described as more functional than exciting, happening maybe twice a week. This was enough to meet our basic needs, but lacked the fiery passion we had in the early days of our marriage. Back then, our desire for each other was relentless, and we took advantage of every moment and place we could find for intimacy. However, about 5 years ago, this intensity began to wane, and our frequent encounters became less frequent, dwindling to just a few times a week. Becky seemed more and more reluctant, leading to frustration and occasional arguments on my part. Over time, though, I came to terms with this shift in our relationship, learning to handle my disappointment on my own. This context was on my mind that Thursday evening as I sat in the den trying to relax with a beer after finishing my packing. Becky was upstairs putting the kids to bed, a routine that had become as much a part of our lives as our changed intimate dynamics. After a while, I heard her footsteps as she came back down and went into the kitchen. She then joined me in the den, a glass of wine in her hand and a look of concern on her face. "Honey," she began, her voice laced with seriousness, "we need to have an important talk. I understand this might upset you, but please hear me out before responding. I promise to address any questions you have afterward. I should have brought this up months ago, but I needed to gather some information first." Her tone was earnest, hinting at the gravity of what she was about to share. I'm not sure why, but I felt a surge of fear. Becky's demeanor was apologetic and fearful, yet her resolve was unmistakable. It was clear she was about to discuss something serious. After taking a deep breath and another large sip of her wine, she continued, "I know our intimate life hasn't been satisfying for you in the past few years, honey. Frankly, I haven't found much joy in our moments together either, Davy. I love you deeply, but, well, honey, you no longer stir the same excitement in me that you once did." She paused briefly before continuing, "And David, I want to, your wife. You're an excellent father, a fantastic provider, and a true friend, but I'm seeking more than what you can offer me physically." I could feel anger starting to boil inside me. What was she implying? I thought she had grown distant, but what was the significance of the past week? I was certain I had made a significant impact. Just as I was about to interject, Becky raised her hand. "David, you promised to let me finish speaking before you responded." I bit down hard, forcing myself to lean back into my chair, trying to temper my rising frustration as she went on. "David, there's someone I've known for a while who captivates me in a way I cannot ignore. It's not just about sex. No, it's about making love in a way that I feel we can't anymore. I didn't want to go behind your back. I will still be here for you, but I need to be honest about my needs. Being with him makes me feel alive, reminiscent of how we felt at the beginning of our marriage. It's something I can't seem to get enough of." I jumped from my chair and began screaming at her, "You cheating witch! How could you?" Becky stood and jumped in front of me. She pushed me back and I fell into my chair. She stood over me and continued, "Shut up. I told you that you wouldn't like what I had to say, but you promised to listen to me before you said anything. Now shut up and listen." I found myself rooted to the spot, stunned, as Becky loomed over me, her gaze fierce with a determination I had never seen before. She went on, her words like a cold, unwelcome breeze. "I've spoken with Dawn about the divorce laws here, and you need to understand the reality. Divorcing me won't be in your favor. You'd end up losing significantly. I'd be entitled to a large portion of your income for alimony and child support. The courts would likely grant me custody of the kids and the house to ensure their stability. Half of our savings and your retirement fund would also be mine. You'd be left with barely enough to live on, let alone maintain the lifestyle you're accustomed to. It would mean our children growing up in a broken home, dealing with all the associated difficulties. For your sake and for the kids, you need to come to terms with my decision. Despite everything, I still hold love and respect for you. Our life won't change much on the surface. I'm not cutting you off entirely, it's just that I'll be absent now and then, maybe even taking trips with him for the time we need together. As her words sank in, a mix of disbelief and anger welled up inside me. Watching Becky return to her seat, a silence fell over the room, heavy and tense. After a moment, I managed to find my voice, a mix of hurt and outrage barely contained. I can't believe this. How could you do this after everything? To come to me with such a betrayal. How long has this been going on? Who is he? Becky looked at me with some anger and said, "Using mean words won't solve anything, honey. I hope you can move past your feelings, and we can continue living as we have for the past few years. I won't tell you how long this has been going on, or when or where it happens. And I definitely won't tell you who I'm intimate with. It's none of your business, and if I catch you snooping around, I'll have to take actions you won't like. I've been seeing someone else, and I'm done hiding it. I need to be honest because the sneaking around is too much. I want to be upfront about when I go out so you can take care of the kids, but I won't tell you who he is to avoid trouble. If you try to do something bad to him or me, it won't end well, especially for our kids who need you. Just know, if you try to hurt us, there will be consequences." Once again, I sat there, shocked at how calmly Becky laid out her information. She seemed so sure, so prepared. It was clear she had been planning this moment for a while. Despite my thoughts and comments, she had an answer for everything I said. I should probably call the guys and let them know I won't be going on this trip. We need to sort some things out and I have a lot on my plate. I reached for my phone, but Becky grabbed my hand. Becky looked me straight in the eyes and said, "No. You're going on this trip. The kids will stay with your parents as we arranged. I don't plan on being alone for the next 2 weeks, and I don't want you around to cause any trouble or try to find out who I'll be with. You need this time away to process everything. I've made sure you'll actually go on this trip, and you won't like the consequences if you don't. You'll regret it if you change your plans now. My friends and I have everything covered. We have sources in town and almost everywhere you might go. If you try anything to find out about my lover or disrupt our lives, I'll find out, and you'll face serious consequences. You have to accept that my plan is solid, and it's what's best for me. If you cooperate, I'll make sure you don't have a miserable life. You'll continue living much like you have been." Becky went over to the desk and took out a thick envelope from her drawer of papers. She came back to me and handed it over. "Here, so you'll believe me. We made a written report of all your actions for the past month. Read it, and you'll see we have it all down. We're aware of everything you do, and if you try to interfere with our plan, we'll know, and I won't go easy on you. Now, I'm heading to bed. If you want some action tonight, come up. You'll see not much has to change unless you start causing trouble." I sat there in shock. Who was this woman, and what happened to my wife? I thought I knew her, but now I discover she's conniving and unfaithful. I watched her go upstairs, her hips swaying seductively. She knew she looked amazing, and she was using it tonight. But for once, it didn't faze me at all. Finally, I opened the envelope and started reading. I was shocked. The report on me was incredibly detailed, capturing things I'd forgotten until I read them. It seemed like someone had been monitoring my every move, noting even minor incidents like spilling something on my shirt. It documented my glances at other women, something natural for anyone. The thoroughness of the report made me wonder if someone wealthy or connected was behind it, given its detail and scope. The report contained private details, including conversations I thought were private. This made me question if I was being bugged. As I considered my next steps, particularly how to leave my cheating wife without losing out in a divorce, I realized I needed advice. My lifelong friends, who shared a complicated history with me and Becky, seemed like the go-to. But then a dreadful thought struck me. What if Becky was involved with one of them? Seeking their counsel could backfire if the traitor was among them, sabotaging my plans before they even started. Just as I was deep in thought, Becky called out from the top of the stairs, provocatively suggesting I join her in bed rather than mulling over things alone. She then returned to our bedroom, leaving me to consider my next move in this complex situation. I never did go to bed. I spent the night on the couch in the den. Becky woke me up when she started making breakfast. She was mad and made sure I knew it. "Get your sorry butt up, Dave. You need to clean up and get ready for work before the kids notice you didn't sleep in your own room last night. When you come back in 2 weeks, I expect you to act normal. If you mess things up in the family, I've already warned you about the consequences." I'm willing to meet your needs sometimes, but I expect you to do your part too. Just so you know, if you find another woman, I'm filing for divorce." I could feel the rage building up inside me. I yelled, "What's going on? You can mess around and think it's fine, but I can't do the same? Not that I want to, but why is it okay for you and not for me?" Becky smirked and said, "Come on, Dave. We both know you're satisfied with what you're getting from me. Now, if you go out looking for someone else, it's just to get back at me. I only seek outside the marriage because you're not meeting my needs as a husband. If you could give me what I need, I wouldn't have to look elsewhere, and I expect the same from you." I stammered. I was so mad I could barely talk, but I finally managed to respond. "I can't believe this. You never once talked to me about needing more or wanting to try something different in bed. You never asked me to do anything we don't normally do. How was I supposed to know you wanted something else if you never told me? I always made sure you were satisfied. Most of the time you had multiple orgasms before we were done. How could I know something was missing when you acted like everything was fine and I was happy?" Becky stood there, then said, "Well, if you're asking now, you're really clueless, huh? It's not just about quantity, dear, it's about quality. You never learned how to please me, and I realized you never would. So I started getting what I needed elsewhere. Now get dressed. I'm tired of hearing you complain." I went upstairs and went through my usual morning routine. We had a quiet breakfast, and when our son Sean asked what was wrong, I started to explain, but Becky interrupted, saying, "Your father's just dealing with a little issue. He'll be fine after his vacation." She shot me a glare before focusing on her breakfast. At work, I decided to ignore some of Becky's advice and cancel my trip with the guys. We were supposed to leave straight from work and meet at our favorite Denny's to drive together. I had a spacious F-150 truck, so we'd load our gear into it. Roger would ride with me, and Don would take his car since he had to return on Wednesday. I talked to Roger, explaining that something had come up and I couldn't make it. I offered to let him use my truck to haul the gear. Roger exclaimed, "Oh, Dave, that's not happening. I just spoke to Becky, and she warned me you might try this. She mentioned you've been stressed lately, but she checked with your secretary and confirmed you have nothing important scheduled. I promised her I'd ensure you take this trip. If I have to, I'll come find you. You're coming with us, and you're going to enjoy yourself." I started to object and refuse outright, but then I felt a twinge of fear. What if Roger was? No, Becky said she was leaving this weekend, and Roger was joining me. But wait, Tenny was staying home and coming up midweek. Could it be him, or someone else? I was stuck. I needed to think more and make plans. I wanted to buy some surveillance equipment, but how? From the report I read, Becky and her friends tracked my credit card purchases, phone calls, and even cash withdrawals. They could spot unusual spending overnight. I was sitting at my desk, lost in thought, when Becky called. As soon as I answered, she launched into a tirade. "David, I told you to go on your trip, and it's not wise for you to try to snoop into my affairs. Roger just informed me that you tried to back out. This is your final warning. Don't mess with me, or you'll lose everything and never see your children again. Do you understand?" This time, she hung up abruptly, leaving me stunned once again. Roger had betrayed me. Did that mean he was involved, or was he genuinely concerned for me? Come to think of it, my old friends didn't seem as close as they used to be. It felt like they were now Becky's friends, and I was just tagging along. Could it be? Nah, not all of them anyway. I decided to go on the trip and met the guys at Denny's. While they were joking around, I sat gloomily. Finally, Don asked me what was wrong. I hesitated for a moment, then said, "Becky has some crazy idea, and I don't know how to deal with it." I can hardly believe she meant what she said, but if she did, my marriage is in trouble. Roger glanced at Don and remarked, "You know Becky's style, Don. She rang me up earlier today saying Loverboy here was trying to bail on our trip. She mentioned he's been on edge and hard to deal with lately and could use this time off to clear his head. I assured her we'd ensure he joined us and had a good time." Don chimed in, "Yeah, I've noticed his moodiness too. Over the past few months, he hasn't been as lively with us. A little adjustment in attitude won't hurt, and we can help with that. I've got beer and his favorite whiskey in my car." Turning to me, he added, "Nothing used to stop us from enjoying our cabin time. Sure, the ladies won't be there this time, but hey, more drinks and stories for us." We headed out, driving to the fishing spot by the stream. It was a short 2-hour ride, and we arrived in time for some serious drinking before bed. The next morning, both guys insisted on fishing, so we set off. The fishing helped me forget about the past few days, but thoughts of Becky crept back as we returned to the cabin. I couldn't believe she meant what she said, but it lingered in my mind. Instead of focusing on what I needed to do, I let the guys convince me to keep drinking with them. Later, during supper, as we continued drinking, Don looked at me and asked, "Okay, Dave, spill it. You look like you lost your best buddy, but I'm still here. What's eating you?" I thought, why not? If I didn't talk to someone I trusted, I'd lose it. These guys were trustworthy. We'd been pals since school started. I spilled the beans to Don and Roger about my marriage's declining bed life over the last 3 years and Becky's bombshell from Thursday evening. After I finished, Don looked at me and said, "Wow, Dave, are you sure that's what Becky said? I can't believe she'd even think something like that. We've known her for years and she's the sweetest, most caring woman I know." "Yeah, I know, but that's exactly what she said as far as I recall." "Is it really true?" Don leaned back and said, "Well, Dave, I can't predict the outcome of a divorce, but she's right about some things. If she's really doing what you say, you have to decide how to handle it. If she's discreet, you need to consider if breaking up the family and the emotional toll on the children, you and Becky, is worth it. In custody battles, the courts usually favor the mother unless she's proven unfit. You'd likely lose custody of your kids. It's true you'd have to financially support them until they're grown, including college expenses. Because she doesn't work, you'd have to pay alimony until she remarries. You might lose your home, either giving it to her or selling it and splitting the money. You'd also have to share your savings and retirement funds. Child support is calculated by a formula that heavily burdens the supporting parent. Expect to lose a big chunk of your income for child support. You'd also need to provide health care for the kids." Dave was stunned, hearing his attorney friend lay out the situation. It was even worse than Becky warning him about the consequences of her infidelity. "I have to know. She won't tell me whom she is with, and I need to know. When I find out, I will make sure she isn't with him any longer." "Dave, as your friend, I get where you're coming from," Don replied. "But as a court officer, I have to advise against that. It's tough, but I'm obligated to report these things. If harm comes to any of Becky's lovers, I'll have to report you. My suggestion? Just deal with it and keep things normal. Maybe if she's cheating, she'll change her mind or get it out of her system. Either way, it seems like sticking to the status quo would be better for you."
"Don, I can't believe you're saying this."
"How would you feel if Shell did something like that and threatened you? Would you just accept her cheating, like Becky expects me to?" Dave asked, incredulous. Don looked uneasy. "No, I'd probably be as upset as you are, but I trust Shell wouldn't do that. She loves me and knows I'm the best partner she could have. I provide for our family, and she wouldn't risk losing that or hurting our kids. Or me. Buddy, you should just accept your situation. If Becky's as vigilant as you say, based on that report, you're in trouble. If you try to investigate her affair, she'll find out and retaliate. Heck, she might even know about this conversation if she's monitoring you closely. Did she know where we were going?" "Shoot, I didn't even think about that. Darn it, now I have more to worry about," Dave muttered, feeling even more confused by Roger's constant smile and Don's oddly happy expression during their conversation. He couldn't believe his friends were so relaxed about Becky treating him badly. Finally, he sighed. "Well, forget it. Let's just have some more drinks." The next morning, Dave woke up before his friends, feeling the need for solitude. He grabbed his fishing gear and headed upstream to his favorite spot. Just as he was about to start fishing, his cell phone rang. He always kept it with him, although reception was spotty in some areas due to weak signals. He was surprised to get reception here. Seeing it was Becky calling, he chose not to answer. After Becky left a message, he listened to it. He was shocked to hear her say, "Well, honey, my sources say you got some good advice from Don last night. I hope you're going to follow it. I love you, and you're too good of a provider and father to lose, but if you do something foolish, I can manage the kids without you. Now have fun." Dave stared at the phone in disbelief. He knew the cabin didn't have cell service and there was no landline, so how did she find out about his conversation with the guys? Oh no, his gear must be bugged, and someone must be nearby to pick up the transmission. He needed to search for it later. Dave didn't notice Roger and Don standing at the edge of the trees while he listened to the message. They grinned, gave each other a thumbs up, then vanished back into the woods, heading towards the cabin. Roger glanced at Don and asked, "You think that'll do it, or should we keep the pressure on for a bit?" "I reckon we should keep those detailed reports going for a month or two. And we've got to keep urging him to just accept it," Don replied. "We've got a good thing happening now. If we can persuade him to let Becky keep fooling around and spend some full nights and weekends with us, we'll be way ahead. Imagine how much better it'll be to have longer sessions with her, without any time constraints. She's so hooked on what we give her in bed that she'll do anything we say just to have more. If we play it smart, he can clue in our wives about the issue, and we can tell them we're out at night helping him figure out what's going on. That'll be solid cover." Dave fished until nearly noon, but his mind wasn't on it. He spent most of his time pondering his marriage, trying to figure out how to uncover Becky's affair, end it, and get back at her. However, he knew he couldn't do anything until he found out who, when, where, and why, if possible. On a cozy Friday evening, as the anticipation of their friend's arrival grew, Becky and the man beside her shared a warm, intimate moment. After spending the day preparing for a weekend at the cabin, they finally had some time to themselves. Becky, feeling playful and affectionate, approached him with a twinkle in her eye. She handed him a drink and sat close, their conversation flowing easily. The atmosphere was charged with excitement for the weekend ahead. They shared laughs, reminisced about past adventures, and eagerly discussed plans for the days to come. As they sat together, the connection between them deepened. Becky, feeling bold, leaned in for a tender kiss, which he warmly reciprocated. Their affectionate exchange soon turned into a gentle caress as they continued to express their fondness for each other. Becky, feeling the warmth of the moment, whispered sweet nothings into his ear. The air was filled with anticipation, not just for the immediate tenderness they shared, but also for the joy that the coming days with their friends would bring. They talked about their friend's upcoming arrival, speculating with excitement about the activities they had planned. The mention of a friend's expected visit on Wednesday added to the bubbling excitement, sparking further conversation about the adventures that awaited them. As the evening progressed, they remained close, cherishing each other's company. Their connection was a testament to their deep bond, one that was amplified by the shared joy of the imminent reunion with their close friends. In that moment, they were reminded of the simple pleasures of companionship, the anticipation of good times ahead, and the beauty of moments spent with someone special. Becky exclaimed, "Oh God, I've been craving this for so long. I can't wait for the others to arrive." "Isn't Don supposed to be here early Wednesday?" "Yeah, baby. Then you'll have both of us for 2 whole nights before I have to help babysit your loving hubby." "Oh God, I'll be so relieved when we can all 3 be together at once. Just being with 1 or 2 of you at a time has been tough. After what you've done to me, there's no way Dave alone can satisfy me anymore." "Do you think we've covered everything?" "I adore him, and he's a wonderful provider and father. I don't want to lose him." "Yeah, I think we can keep him in check," her lover replied. "I just hope Dave doesn't start confiding in our wives and causing trouble. We've been doing fine the last 3 years. I think we should have been content with how things were, instead of getting greedy like this. Having you to ourselves all night or on a long trip sounds nice, but I'm not sure we can push Dave this hard. We might have unleashed something uncontrollable. Well, the bugs we planted and the few things we found that make him look bad should make him back off. I just wish he wasn't so straight and honorable. It's unbelievable we haven't found anything shady he's done. How can a man in business for himself not take advantage of situations to make extra cash?" He sighed, shaking his head. "Oh, by the way, Becky, are you still keeping an eye on the finances and transactions like we discussed?" "Yeah, I convinced the bank to limit his cash withdrawals, but I can't control his check writing. At least we can track them if he does. I wish I had a way to monitor the business more closely. Now I regret pushing him to hire office help so I could stay home with the kids and be a housewife." Becky chuckled, then added, "Of course, if I hadn't insisted on staying home, we wouldn't be having as much fun, would we? I was so frustrated only being with you all a couple of nights a month or on trips. Being a stay-at-home mom allowed us to play more, and now with this plan, we can play whenever we want." Dave was gloomy and preoccupied by the river. His friends attempted to chat with him and lift his spirits, but they weren't making much headway. They got him drunk on Tuesday evening. After he passed out from intoxication, Don and Roger retreated to the porch to converse quietly. Roger expressed concern, saying, "I'm starting to fret, Don. We've been talking to him for 4 days, and if anything, he's becoming more determined to leave Becky and seek revenge on her lover. He's on the brink of exploding and going wild. How are we going to manage this situation now? It all seemed so promising and simple when we planned to control him and spend more time with her. What if he finds out and tells our wives?" Don reassured him, saying, "Relax, Roger. I can manipulate him in the divorce proceedings and paint her as an angel. Even if she does divorce him, so what? We only embarked on this because she said she wanted to keep him around. I'll admit, banging her while she's married to him gives me a thrill, but she'd still be just as enjoyable if she weren't married. We just need to prevent him and our wives from discovering the truth so we don't get screwed over. We might need to resort to some physical persuasion, but let's wait and see how things unfold in a week or 2. Dave couldn't hear the conversation clearly, but he had awakened and caught snippets of their discussion on the front porch. He understood they were upset that he was stubborn about accepting Becky's infidelity, and they believed they needed to convince him to be more tolerant. Now, not only was he angry with her, but he was also angry with them. Before drifting back to sleep, he resolved to handle the situation without their assistance. Over the next few days, Dave grew more distant from his friends. Roger and Kenny grew genuinely concerned when all he would say about the situation was, "I'm going to find out who the woman is sleeping with. And both she and they are going to pay, big time." Finally, the day arrived for them to head home. Once again, Roger rode with Dave, but there was no conversation in the truck. Kenny drove his own car, and as soon as they reached an area with good cell service, he called Dawn. Dawn and Becky sat in Dave's living room and listened as Kenny reported on Dave. "He's boiling with anger. If anything, he's even more determined to make you pay than he was when I got to the cabin. I'm not sure what to do, but I think we should lay low until he calms down. If he catches us, it could get ugly." Becky sat in shock, tears streaming down her cheeks, and she was almost hyperventilating. Dawn, with clenched jaws and a red face, sat beside her. After a brief conversation with Kenny, Dawn turned to Becky. He pulled her close and began caressing her breasts to calm her down. As he touched her, he said, "Becky, don't worry. I didn't want to resort to drastic measures if we didn't have to, but it seems like we have no choice now. See how he behaves this weekend, and let me know on Sunday evening if it seems like he's going to cause trouble. We'll file on Monday. I can freeze all your personal accounts, and I believe I can freeze the business accounts pending court approval for all expenditures. We can convince the judge that he might drain your accounts and ruin the business if we don't take control." Dave came home late on Friday night and found Becky in the living room, looking upset as though she had been crying. She seemed disheveled and was only wearing one of his shirts. As Dave walked by, he noticed something odd about her appearance that made him very upset. Becky looked at him defiantly, as if provoking him with her posture. Dave was really angry and just walked by Becky without saying anything. Becky tried to follow him into their bedroom and even attempted to join him in the shower, but Dave firmly told her to leave, expressing his disappointment and anger about the situation. He told her that he had hoped they could resolve their issues, but now he felt there was no chance for that. Dave warned Becky that even though she had hurt him, he would find a way to respond to her actions and those of the person or people she was involved with. After getting himself together, Dave quickly packed his things into his truck, going back and forth from the house. While packing, he overheard Becky on the phone. One of the last things he tried to do before leaving was to transfer money from their joint bank accounts. But he discovered he was locked out because the password had been changed. This made him even more angry. Turning around, he saw Becky watching him, which only added to his frustration. Becky appeared remorseful as she spoke. "I hoped you'd come to your senses, and we wouldn't reach this point. You realize you're making a grave mistake, right? I love you more than any man I've ever known. I don't want to lose you. If you persist, you'll risk losing the business and everything we've built. Just so you're aware, I've hired Don as my lawyer. I just spoke with him and informed him of your behavior. He'll be in touch." Dave was stunned. He knew Don was also her friend, but geez, he'd been Dave's attorney since he started practicing law. He couldn't believe Don would betray him like this. Dave left his home and drove straight to his office and warehouse complex. He planned to stay in his office and conference room for a while. On the way in, he stopped at the gate and spoke to the guard. "I'm having some trouble with my wife. She and her lover have threatened me. I need you to call in extra security and keep all unauthorized persons off the property." Saturday morning, around 10 a.m., Dave was leaving the complex to grab breakfast when he got halted at the gate. A man approached him, confirmed his identity, then handed him an envelope saying, "You've been served." After the man left, Dave opened the envelope and found a restraining order. It stated that he couldn't come within 300 feet of his wife, children, or their home. Additionally, there was an order requiring court approval for any expenditures from his personal or business accounts, preventing him from depleting the company's assets before divorce proceedings, which were set to start the following Monday. After breakfast, Dave went to his assistant's house. When she opened the door, she remarked, "Dave, you look awful." "What's wrong?" "I need to talk. I need help, and you're the only person I can trust. I'm sorry to bother you on the weekend, but I'm in trouble, and I have no idea who I can trust or talk to." She stepped back and gestured for Dave to come in. "Come on in, Dave. Would you like some coffee?" Dave followed her into the kitchen, where he saw her husband, Thaddeus, sitting at the table. It seemed he had interrupted their brunch, as there were plates with eggs still on the table. "I'm sorry. I guess I should leave." Thaddeus looked up at Dave and said, "You look terrible, Dave. Sit down and talk to us, for heaven's sake." Dave slowly recounted to the couple everything that had happened in his life since 2 weeks ago Thursday. Then he expressed, "I'm at a loss for what to do now or how to help myself. My supposed best friend spent the last 2 weeks urging me to let Becky continue her affair on the side. They argue that since she's been doing it for years and I never noticed, why should I disrupt things? And now Dawn, my former best friend, is collaborating with Becky as her attorney, entangling me in legal complications. I can't even spend money without court approval, and I can't get that until at least Monday. My best friend has taken Becky's case, so I'm cut off there. I'm not even sure I have enough money to eat. All my credit cards were declined when I tried to pay for breakfast. Gertrude leaned back and said, "Dave, I can't believe Becky would do this to you." She turned to her husband and asked, "Thad, can't we offer him some financial assistance?" Her husband nodded in agreement. Dave sat at the table, feeling angry, helpless, and determined to seek retribution like never before. Thad pondered for a moment before stating, "If what you say is true, you need some serious help. I just hope there isn't a bug hidden in your clothes somewhere." His eyes narrowed and he added, "Come with me, Dave." They headed downstairs into the walkout basement. Stopping at the bottom of the stairs, Thad instructed, "Dave, undress right now and give me your clothes. There's a shower over there and I'll bring you some of my clothes to wear. I'll take yours to the front door after you've cleaned up. We'll talk. I doubt there's a bug in our house, but they might have followed you here and planted a listening device outside." Dave changed into some old sweatpants belonging to Thad, and then all three of them retreated into a cement storm shelter beneath the stairway. He felt foolish as he began to speak, but Thad and Gertrude stopped him. They spent the next hour communicating through written notes, planning out their course of action. After covering all possible scenarios, Thad left to contact individuals whom he believed could assist Dave. They agreed that Dave would have minimal interaction with these people, and Thad and Gertrude would lend him the necessary funds to start the investigation. While it was assumed that Becky would halt her activities, they planned to monitor her and Dave's three friends for a while. On Sunday, Dave, Thad, and Gertrude decided to catch up over lunch, enjoying each other's company and sharing laughs. At the same time, Becky hosted a meeting at her house with Don, Kenny, and Roger to discuss some pressing matters. After their meeting concluded, they all took a moment to relax and share their thoughts on the situation. Roger, looking concerned, broke the silence. "I'm feeling uneasy about all this," he admitted. "I'm not sure if it was a good idea to meet today. What if Dave finds out we were here? Maybe we should keep a low profile until we figure things out. We had a stable situation for over 3 years, and pushing the boundaries now seems risky. I'm worried this might not end well for us." He continued to share his anxieties about recent events, expressing doubt over their strategy and concern over Dave's recent activities, particularly his time spent with his secretary and her husband. Roger mentioned that their surveillance hadn't picked up anything suspicious, but he was still nervous about the potential repercussions of their actions and decisions. "Stop complaining. We've got Dave completely under control," Don said firmly. "He's unable to access any money, and we're keeping such close tabs on him that we'll know his every move before he even makes it. Right now, he's with his personal assistant and her husband, feeling sorry for himself. If he tries to leave, we'll be alerted before he's even out of sight. He can't even make a call without us knowing what he's saying, whether it's from his phone or hers." On Monday morning, Dave started searching for a new attorney to represent him. He spoke with several and scheduled appointments with 2. It was a challenge for him because Don had been his legal counsel for years, but now that Don was representing Becky, he had to find someone else. Eventually, he decided to hire Sally Hawk, who impressed him during the interview and came highly recommended. Their first course of action was to initiate legal proceedings to release Dave's business accounts and secure enough funds for his living expenses. They also opted to hire another private investigator firm to monitor Becky. Dave authorized wiretaps on his house and video surveillance. Furthermore, he gave Sally the green light to start divorce proceedings based on adultery. Later that evening, Thad handed Dave the footage captured the previous day. Naturally, Dave was devastated. Discovering that Becky was involved with all 3 of his friends only fueled his anger further. However, he now knew who he was up against. The following morning, he went to his office and made 5 copies of the CD. He distributed 1 to each of his friends' wives, 1 to his attorney, kept 1 for himself, and placed the original in a safe deposit box. Additionally, he uploaded the video to various amateur 30th sites on the internet, using the participants' real names. He set up the site as pay-per-view, with the funds directed from a PayPal account to a bank in the Cayman Islands. He smirked, realizing Don had given him a key to his office, allowing Dave to set up the site from there, implicating Don if the tracing led back. Dave also sent still images of Becky's actions to several of her friends and family members via email. He executed all of this using the free computers at the college library to avoid suspicion. Although he briefly considered using Don's office, he dismissed the idea, knowing it would appear suspicious, as Don wouldn't engage in such activities. Using the college computers was straightforward for Dave. He had done so multiple times before without getting caught. Despite the requirement of a student ID card and password for logging in, Dave often found machines left logged on, allowing him to use someone else's credentials. Moreover, the lack of CCTV security cameras at the local college meant he didn't need to worry about being captured on video in the vicinity. On Wednesday, Dave had a blast fielding phone calls from people who had watched the video. In the early afternoon, Becky called him in tears. She asked, "How could you do that? I thought you loved me. I told you it was just sex because you couldn't give me what I needed. How could you ruin my life like that?" Dave chuckled and replied, "Rebecca, I didn't ruin your life. You did. I'm just delivering the payback I promised if you went through with your plans. Frankly, now that I think about it, I'm pretty sure you've been cheating on me for a while. There were plenty of times when one of the guys would make sure I was out, and I'd come home late. A lot of things that didn't add up then make sense now. By the time I'm done with you and those jerks, you'll regret ever doing this." Later that afternoon, Becky's sister called. She said, "You poor fool. Looks like you finally figured out about your oh-so-perfect wife. I assume you're the one who sent this video. Well, now it seems she and I can share the boys. I didn't know she was with them until I got this." Dave shuddered as she hung up, her maniacal laughter echoing in his mind all night. Don also called, and as soon as Dave answered, he started yelling. Dave played along. Upon realizing it was Don, he kept Don on the line for almost 15 minutes. Don made threats of both physical and legal harm, saying, "You jerk. By the time I'm through with you, you'll wish you never crossed me. I'll have your wife whenever I want, and we'll have most of your money too. If you had just done what I told her, you'd still have a family, money, and a life. After I'm done with you, I'll have the guys rough you up. I've been with that girl since high school, and I'll continue to be long after you're gone, you jerk. Enjoy living in the dumps, because that's where you'll be when I'm through. I'll file every lawsuit I can find and bleed you dry just to defend against them." Later, calls from Becky's parents were distressing. Her mother was in tears as she asked Dave, "How could you do this to Becky? I understand she hurt you deeply, but spreading pictures of her everywhere was too vengeful. Couldn't you have resolved this in a more civilized way?" By the time Dave decided to head home for the evening, he felt content with his actions so far. He was confident that the computerized answering system his company had installed would prove its worth, especially from the recordings it made that day alone. Initially, he had concerns about how his then-attorney and friend, Don, had advised him to set up the system with the telecom provider. When a call came in, the computer would answer and give a warning before recording began. The warning stated, "Thank you for calling Central U.S. Inventory Logistics and Security Company. All phone calls are recorded for later use. If you do not want your call recorded, please hang up now. If you wish to speak to someone, please press 0 to be connected to an operator." It seemed Don either didn't consider the warning or was too furious to heed it. Because all his threats and boasting were captured after the warning he insisted on including in the system. Dave saw this as poetic justice. Unfortunately, all the individuals involved in Becky's circle stopped associating with her once the legal cases were initiated. Fortunately, Thad's acquaintance managed to capture video and audio recordings on the first Saturday, as none of the private investigators recorded any incriminating evidence. While some suspicious phone calls were obtained, they were mostly ambiguous and of little use. One of Sally's initial actions was to report Don to the State Bar Association. His law license was promptly suspended, and he was permanently disbarred due to his unethical conduct and threats, even before the divorce and legal proceedings concluded. Dave's divorce was finalized with Becky receiving a small portion, around 25%, of the marital assets. Dave retained ownership of his company. Furthermore, Dave was granted custody of the children, primarily due to a subtle detail initially overlooked during the photo session. When Thad's acquaintance captured images of Becky and the others, they inadvertently photographed another individual. This picture not only captured the scene of the event, but also showed a child peeking into the house from the backyard through the patio door. When the judge saw this evidence, full custody of the children was awarded to Dave. Dave's legal actions against Don proved highly successful. He was awarded $1.3 million in damages for breaching attorney-client privilege and for Don's misconduct in representing Becky while still acting as Dave's attorney. Don faced censure for his inappropriate relationship with Becky and various ethical violations, leading to fines payable to the state. As Dave pursued legal recourse against Don's financial situation deteriorated significantly, nearing bankruptcy. Meanwhile, Shelley, Don's wife, depleted most of their remaining marital assets during their divorce. Similarly, Pam, Kenny's wife, received a significant portion of his assets after their divorce. Surprisingly, Roger and Trixie remained married, as it was revealed that Trixie had willingly engaged in the group's activities. However, Roger grew discontented with his friend's continued exploitation of Trixie. When Don and Kenny moved in with Roger after being ousted from their homes, tensions escalated. Kenny's frustration boiled over one evening, leading to a violent altercation where he assaulted Don and Roger. Kenny was hospitalized due to injuries sustained in the fight, and Don and Kenny were subsequently convicted and sentenced to a year in jail. Consequently, Roger and Trixie ended their marriage. Reflecting on these events nearly a year later, Dave and Gertrude discussed a news article detailing the conflict involving Don, Kenny, and Roger over Trixie. Gertrude then inquired whether Dave maintained any contact with Rebecca, noting her supervised visits with their children. Dave glanced at her and replied firmly, "No, we only communicate when necessary, usually about the kids. I have no interest in speaking with her, and if I could avoid it entirely, I would. I was just curious. You two seemed perfect for years and then, well, I've always wondered if you knew why she did what she did. I just can't comprehend why a woman who loves her husband would act that way." Dave gazed at Gertrude, feeling a knot form in his stomach. He clenched his jaw and bit his lip before reaching into his desk drawer, retrieving a folder. He handed it to Gertrude. "I don't know why I held on to this letter. I'm not even sure why I agreed to read it. Remember when Becky's mother visited the office in tears about 7 months ago? She gave me this letter and insisted I read it before I left, so I did." Gertrude opened the folder and read the following. "Dear David, you may question why I still call you dearest, but despite everything, you're the man I love. I've made mistakes that hurt you, and for that, I'm deeply sorry. My actions weren't intentional, but I need to come clean about them. Our past relationships with our high school friends were complicated, but they didn't affect us until I made a mistake on our 9th anniversary. You were busy with work, and I ended up drinking too much at a Valentine's Day party. Feeling lonely, things took a turn when Don and Kenny drove me home. Reminiscing about past encounters led to a moment of weakness where I gave into temptation with them. That night, I experienced feelings and pleasures that were intense and new. This led to more encounters with them, sometimes individually or together, whenever you were away. These moments were filled with excitement and fear of getting caught, which somehow added to the thrill. Don later suggested an arrangement to avoid the risk of getting caught, believing you might accept it to keep our family intact. I convinced myself you might agree, hoping to avoid losing you and our children, but I realize now how much pain and betrayal my actions have caused you. I'm truly sorry for the hurt I've caused. I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me. Yours always." Becky Gertrude glanced up after reading the letter, her eyes teary, but she held back her anger. "Dave, I truly believe she still loves you more than anyone else. I know she's hurting, but Dave, she was nearly as much a victim as you were. I think your friend Don was a predator. You know, over the years, we've both heard some terrible rumors about him. I wouldn't be surprised if he intentionally got her drunk that first night. No man of high moral character, no true friend, would take advantage of her like she said he did. Yeah, I know, Gertie, but, well, I'm not entirely sure she gave me the whole truth there. She always seemed to pay more attention to Don than I would have liked. I brushed it off, but there were several times we argued after a party because I thought she was too friendly, letting him take too many liberties. But I never caught them in anything substantial to confront them about." Dave sighed. "I have to admit, after Don's phone call, when I finally caught them, thanks to you and Thad, I had enough doubts to get DNA tests done on the children. You can't imagine how relieved I was when the test confirmed I was their father." He paused, then added, "Well, anyway, I believe she thinks she loves me, but I don't think it's genuine love. It's more like infatuation, maybe a deep affection. I was easy to live with, a good provider and father. I now realize I was probably her last choice, and we married because, well, I'm not sure why she married me. I loved her deeply, but I don't think she felt that same depth of love for me. I believe that's why she cheated and continued to do so. She was selfish and only cared about her own pleasure, needs, and desires."
How many men out there can honestly say their wife is popular? And I don't mean famous or anything. I'm talking about a woman who has this magnetic energy that draws people, and a woman who walks into a room and people notice. Men notice. That was my wife, Emily. She didn't have a massive online following or a high-powered career, but wherever she went, she just had that presence. You know, the kind that makes heads turn. And believe me, I noticed. We got married in our mid-20s, and now we're pushing 40. We met in college. She was the bubbly, outgoing girl who could light up any room, and I was the quieter, more introverted guy. Opposites attract, right? At first, everything was good, great even. We had that spark. And then we got married, bought a house, had 2 beautiful daughters. The typical suburban dream. I worked your standard office job. 9 to 5, decent pay, benefits, the whole package. Emily stayed home for the most part, at least when the girls were younger. She'd take on part-time work here and there, mostly just helping out an elderly neighbor or picking up odd jobs when she felt like it. Our marriage, though? It was fine. That's the best way I can describe it, fine. Nothing was wrong per se, but nothing was amazing either. We weren't those couples who are all over each other, but we weren't fighting either. We just kind of existed in this space, raising the kids, paying the bills, making life work. The sex was still happening, but let's be honest, it wasn't like the early days. It was routine like everything else. I guess, looking back, I ignored the signs because they weren't obvious. Not at first. Emily started going out more. Sometimes it was for groceries, sometimes to meet a friend for coffee, or she'd say she was taking a walk. Nothing out of the ordinary, except these little trips got longer. I just ran into so-and-so, she'd say when she got back. Or, the line at the store was crazy. I didn't think much of it. I mean, we've been married for over a decade. I trusted her. She was a good wife, a great mom. Why would I doubt her? But slowly, I started noticing the changes. There were more nights where she'd be out later than usual. More nights where she'd come home, and I'd ask, "How was your day?" And her answer would feel rehearsed, like she had already thought about what she was going to say. Then there were the phone calls. She'd be on her phone a lot more than before, texting and smiling at her screen like a teenager. At first, I thought it was just her keeping in touch with friends or planning some mom's night out. But when I leaned in once, just casually trying to kiss her goodnight, she pulled away saying, "Not now, I'm tired." It stung, but I brushed it off. People get tired. I was tired too. But the phone, it kept pinging, more and more messages, mostly in the evenings when we'd sit on the couch together. I'd be watching TV, and she'd be scrolling, her attention completely absorbed by whatever was on that tiny screen. And it wasn't just the usual social media stuff, it was messages. I started glancing over casually at first, just to see who she was talking to. But she was always quick to close her phone when I got too close. That's when the knot in my stomach started forming, but I kept telling myself, "Nah, it's nothing. You're being paranoid." I didn't realize just how much of an idiot I was until one night I caught her on the phone late when she thought I was asleep. It was a low, whispered conversation. I couldn't make out much, but I heard enough. Enough to know it wasn't her mother or a friend from work. "You know, I can't right now. He's still awake. Maybe tomorrow." I felt the cold sweat form on my forehead. I wanted to barge in, demand to know who she was talking to, but instead, I just lay there pretending to be asleep, trying to figure out what the hell was going on. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of everything. Could she be cheating? No, not Emily. She wouldn't do that. Would she? The next morning, everything was back to normal, or at least it seemed that way. She was chipper, getting the kids ready for school, kissing me goodbye as if nothing had happened. But something had shifted. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was going on behind my back. I started paying more attention, noticing every small detail, every tiny thing that seemed off. I started asking more questions, subtle at first. "Who were you talking to last night?" Or "Where exactly did you go today?" But she always had an answer ready, like she had rehearsed it. "Oh, just a friend," or "I went for a walk, nothing special." But it was something. It was everything. And then one night it happened. I was cleaning up after dinner, and her phone buzzed on the counter. She was in the other room, so I grabbed it, figuring I'd just hand it to her. But then I saw the name. It wasn't one of her friends or her mom. It was a guy. I didn't recognize the name at first, but something in my gut told me to open the message. And that's when I saw it. The flirty texts, the inside jokes, the winking emojis. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. My wife, the mother of my kids, the woman I thought I knew, was having some kind of affair. My hands were shaking as I put the phone back down, trying to act normal as she walked into the kitchen. I couldn't even look at her. Everything was more complicated than I'd thought. For weeks, that feeling in my gut kept growing, gnawing at me, but I couldn't pin it down. I mean, sure, I'd found those texts on her phone, And yeah, they were suspicious, but part of me was still holding out, trying to convince myself that it wasn't what it seemed. One day, we were out shopping, just a regular trip to the store to pick up groceries. Nothing special, nothing out of the ordinary. I was pushing the cart while Emily wandered off between the aisles, looking for something. As I turned a corner, I spotted someone out of the corner of my eye. It was a guy I hadn't seen in years, an old friend from back in the day. Let's call him Tom. Tom was standing near the shelves, but there was something strange about the way he was moving, like he was trying to avoid being seen. He was peeking around, ducking behind a display like he didn't want anyone to notice him. At first, I thought I was imagining things. Why would Tom be hiding in a grocery store? Curiosity got the better of me, so I left the cart and walked over to him. "Tom!" I called out. He jumped slightly, but turned and smiled when he saw me. "Oh, hey, long time no see, man." We greeted each other, but something felt off. He was too cheerful, like he was putting on an act. I glanced around to see if Emily had spotted us, but she was off in another aisle, completely unaware. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to make sense of why he was acting so strange. Yeah, I'm good," he said, but his eyes darted around nervously. I actually wanted to talk to you." I raised an eyebrow. "About what?" "Not here," he muttered, glancing over his shoulder. "Let's meet later. There's a bar near the strip mall. You know the one. We can talk there. Tonight?" I wasn't sure what to make of it. Tom had always been the outgoing type, never the kind of guy who'd act all jumpy. I hesitated for a moment, not really wanting to get involved in whatever this was. But something in his voice caught my attention. He seemed urgent, and frankly, I was curious. What had happened to him? Why was he acting so strange? "All right," I said, though not entirely willing. "I'll meet you there." That evening, after putting the kids to bed and telling Emily I had some errands to run, I headed to the bar. I found Tom sitting at a corner table, already a beer in front of him. The moment I walked in, I noticed he wasn't the same guy from earlier. The nervousness was gone. He looked more confident, more put together. It was like the grocery store thing never happened. "Glad you made it," he said as I sat down. "I've been thinking about you." "Thinking about me?" I chuckled, trying to lighten the mood. "What's that supposed to mean?" "I remember our friendship, you know," he said, taking a long sip of his beer. "And I want to help you." I leaned back, confused. "Help me with what?" "Everything's fine, man." He gave me a look, one that told me he knew more than I did. "Listen, I'm not trying to make this awkward, but something's been going on. Something you should know about." Now I was hooked. My stomach tightened as I waited for him to continue. He pulled out a business card and slid it across the table toward me. I glanced down at it. It was for some massage place in town. "Massage studio? What's this got to do with anything?" "I've seen your wife there," he said, his voice low, almost cautious. "Yes, so?" "She goes there sometimes," I replied. "She gets those spa treatments, you know? Facials, massages, the usual stuff. It's nothing new." Tom shook his head. "No, man. I mean, she works there." I stared at him, confused. "What are you talking about?" "She doesn't have any massage training. Why would she be working there?" He let out a sigh, his eyes not leaving mine. "It's not that kind of massage, man. It's a different kind of place." It took a second for his words to sink in. "What do you mean, different?" Tom looked uncomfortable, but he didn't hold back. "I mean, it's a massage parlor, but with extras. You know what I mean? A massage that ends with a little more than just a back rub. It's all under the table, but they've got women working there who do it for cash. I've seen your wife there, and I talked to one of the girls who works there. She said your wife's on a floating schedule, shows up when she can." For a moment, I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My brain couldn't process what he was telling me. My wife, Emily, working in a place like that? No way. It didn't make sense. "You're sure it was her?" I finally asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Tom nodded. "I wouldn't lie to you about something like this. I saw her, and I asked around. It's her." The room felt like it was closing in on me. My heart was pounding in my chest, and my hands felt cold. I didn't know what to do, what to think. Emily? Working there? Why? For money? Was that what all those extra part-time jobs had really been about? I had so many questions, but no answers. I'm sorry, man, Tom said, finishing his drink and standing up. I thought you deserved to know. As I left the bar, I felt like I was walking in a daze. I had no idea what to do with this information. My wife, the mother of my kids, was doing this for money? What the hell was happening to my life? I didn't know what to do. Tom's words kept echoing in my head. My wife, working in a place like that? I couldn't wrap my mind around it. Part of me wanted to confront her immediately, but something stopped me. What if Tom was wrong? What if there was a logical explanation? If I accused her and it turned out to be false, it would blow everything up for no reason. I couldn't risk that, so I made a decision. I wouldn't tell her. Not yet. I needed to find out for myself. The next day, when Emily left for one of her usual errands, I waited. I sat there, staring at the clock, each minute dragging by as I tried to calm the storm of thoughts in my head. After half an hour, I grabbed my keys and headed to the massage place Tom had mentioned. When I walked in, the place seemed normal enough. The receptionist smiled at me like I was just another client. "Can I help you?" she asked. Yeah, I stammered. "Is anyone free for a massage?" She looked at the schedule, then nodded. "Yes, we have availability. If you'd like to come in and lie down, we'll have someone with you shortly." I followed her instructions, my heart pounding in my chest as I was led to a dimly lit room. The soft hum of spa music played in the background, and the scent of lavender filled the air. I took off my shirt, hesitated for a moment, then undressed completely and lay down on the massage table, face down. What was I doing? I still wasn't sure if I wanted to go through with this. A few minutes later, the door opened, and a woman walked in. But she wasn't who I expected. She was older than me by quite a bit. Actually, probably in her late 50s or early 60s. She said nothing at first, just started rubbing oil on my back, working her hands into the muscles. It was a regular massage, nothing suspicious. I felt a little relieved. "So," she said after a few moments, "what kind of massage are you looking for today? We have therapeutic, relaxing, or maybe you want something a little more special." I froze for a second. There it was. This was exactly what Tom had been talking about. I cleared my throat, trying to sound casual. Yeah, maybe something more." Without a word, she stopped what she was doing and left the room. My heart was racing now. I wasn't sure what I had just agreed to, but there was no turning back. A few minutes later, the door opened again, and this time, it wasn't the older woman. A much younger woman walked in, probably in her late 20s, wearing tight leggings and a tank top. She smiled, a knowing look in her eyes, and without saying anything, she started the massage. Her hands moved over my body, but this wasn't like the first massage. It was softer, slower, more deliberate. The tension in the room shifted immediately. I won't go into details, but it didn't take long before it became clear that this wasn't just a massage. It ended exactly how I had feared it might, and to my surprise, I didn't stop it. In fact, I went along with it. I let it happen, and as it was happening, I couldn't deny that it felt good. Too good. When it was over, I got dressed in silence. I handed the woman her payment, tipped generously, and walked out the door like nothing had happened. But everything had changed. As I stepped outside, the guilt hit me all at once. I had just betrayed my wife. I did the very thing I feared she was doing to me. I had sunk to that level without even knowing the truth. If Tom was wrong, if my wife wasn't involved in this place, then I had just destroyed something for no reason. I couldn't think straight. The drive home was a blur, my mind racing with a million thoughts. What the hell had I done? And more importantly, what was I going to do next? When I got home, the house was quiet. Emily hadn't returned yet, and the kids were still at school. I sat down at the kitchen table, trying to process everything, my hands shaking slightly as I replayed what had just happened. Was this what Emily was doing behind my back? Or was I just projecting, letting my fears push me into something I shouldn't have done? Either way, I was left with one brutal truth. I wasn't innocent anymore. I sat in that dark room, the dim light casting long shadows across the walls, my heart racing so fast I could feel it pounding in my chest. I had planned this moment in my head 1,000 different ways, but now that it was about to happen, nothing felt right. My fingers tapped against my knee as I waited, the silence in the room feeling heavier by the second. I couldn't believe I was here again. The massage parlor. Her workplace, apparently. I had gone through so many emotions over the last 24 hours that I barely knew which way was up. Anger, hurt, betrayal. And now, as I waited for her to walk through that door, a kind of bitter anticipation. Last night had been a revelation. I had waited until Emily was fast asleep, breathing softly next to me in bed, and then I did it. I went through her phone. I know some people would say that's crossing a line, that it's a violation of privacy, but after everything I'd seen, after what Tom had told me, I didn't care. I needed to know the truth. My fingers had shaken as I scrolled through her messages. First, I found the ones with the massage parlor. It was all there like a punch to the gut. The shifts, the appointments with VIP clients. And it wasn't just work. These messages were explicit. They weren't talking about deep tissue massages or aromatherapy. It was all about keeping the clients happy, giving them what they paid for. I felt sick reading it, seeing my wife talk about herself like that, like a commodity to be bought and sold. But that wasn't the worst part. No, the worst part was finding the other messages. The ones from him. Mike. I didn't know who he was at first, just another name in her phone. But as I scrolled through their conversations, it became painfully clear. He wasn't just a client. He was more than that. There was tenderness in their messages, affection. They weren't just arranging meetings. They were talking late at night, joking, flirting. I read through each text with a growing pit in my stomach. This wasn't just about money for Emily. She had feelings for this guy. It wasn't just sex. It was emotional. I wanted to throw her phone across the room. I wanted to scream, to wake her up and confront her right then and there. But I didn't. I kept my cool somehow. I knew if I blew up now, I wouldn't get the full truth. And part of me still couldn't fully accept it. Maybe there was some other explanation. Maybe it wasn't as bad as it seemed. I needed to see it with my own eyes. So I came here to the massage parlor to see what was really going on, to see if Emily, no, Sabrina, as they called her here, would actually walk through that door. The minutes ticked by, and finally, the door creaked open. Emily stepped into the room, her eyes on the ground as she entered, probably expecting another client. She hadn't noticed me yet. When she finally looked up, our eyes met, and she froze. She stopped dead in her tracks, her face draining of color as she realized it was me sitting there, not some random stranger looking for a special massage. "Dubbish, what are you doing here?" she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't move. I just stared at her, letting the silence stretch between us until it was unbearable. Finally, I spoke, my voice low and steady, though I could feel the anger simmering just below the surface. "You tell me," I said coldly. "Or should I call you Sabrina now?" She blinked, her mouth opening and closing like she was trying to find the right words, but nothing came out. She was cornered, and we both knew it. There was no escaping this. "We need to talk about this," she finally managed, her voice trembling. "Talk," I scoffed. "Talk about what?" "About how you've been lying to me for God knows how long. About how you've been sneaking around behind my back, working in a place like this with clients." I practically spat the word out, my voice rising with each sentence. Emily took a step forward, her hands out as if she was trying to calm me down. "It's not what you think," she started, but I wasn't having any of it. "Not what I think?" I shot back, standing up from the massage table. "I know exactly what this is. I've seen the messages, Emily. I know what you do here. VIP clients? Special massages? What the hell is going on with you?" Her face twisted in pain as she realized just how much I knew. I was going to tell you. I didn't want it to happen this way. I let out a bitter laugh. Tell me? You were going to tell me? When? After another night of lying to me? After another shift here, pretending you're out running errands? Tears welled up in her eyes, and she opened her mouth to say something, but I cut her off. You know what? It's not just about the money, is it? It's not just the work. It's him. Who's Mike, Emily? Or should I say Sabrina? She flinched at the name. It's not what you think, she whispered, her voice cracking. Bullshit. My voice was cold, unrecognizable even to me. You've been talking to him. I read the texts. You're in love with this guy, aren't you? You've been screwing around behind my back with him. She shook her head, the tears now streaming down her face. No, I swear it's not like that. It's complicated. I didn't want to hear any more. The anger was boiling over now, and I couldn't stop myself. Complicated? I roared. No, Emily, it's not complicated. You've been lying to me. You've been cheating on me emotionally, physically, I don't even know anymore. And for what? For some guy you met in this sleazy place? She was sobbing now, but I didn't care. I had said everything I needed to say. Without another word, I turned and stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind me. But as I walked out of that place, rage still burning in my chest, I knew I wasn't done yet. There was something else I needed to do. Something final. I couldn't just let this end here. As I stormed out of the room, my heart still pounding from the argument with Emily, I was seething. The betrayal, the lies, it was all too much. My mind was racing, and I knew I couldn't just leave things like this. Not after everything I'd discovered. I wanted her to feel the consequences, and not just her. I wanted that whole disgusting operation to burn. Before I reached the exit, something caught my eye. A fire alarm button, right there in the corridor. It was like fate had put it there just for me, offering a perfect distraction. I glanced around. Nobody was paying attention. The receptionist had disappeared somewhere into the back of the building, probably dealing with another VIP client. I didn't think twice. I pressed the fire alarm. Immediately, the building erupted in chaos. The piercing sound of the alarm blared through the walls, and within seconds, I saw the receptionist rushing toward the back of the building, shouting something about evacuating. Perfect. They'd be too distracted now to notice what I was about to do. I made my way over to the front desk, where a laptop sat open. It took me less than a minute to sit down and start searching. My fingers flew over the keys, my heart racing even faster than before. This wasn't just about Emily anymore. It was about taking down the whole damn place. I wasn't just going to expose her. I was going to expose all of it. After a few minutes of digging, I found what I was looking for, the customer data. It was right there, all neatly stored in a folder labeled something innocent like client records. I clicked on it, and there it was, names, phone numbers, appointments. Everything. These weren't just random people coming in for massages. These were powerful men, influential people. I could barely believe what I was seeing. I took out my phone and snapped pictures of the screen, making sure to capture every detail. It only took a few moments, but it felt like forever. Just as I was about to leave, I saw another folder, this one labeled staff. I opened it, and there was again a goldmine of information. Employee records, photos, schedules. Every woman who worked there, including Sabrina. I snapped pictures of those files too. If this place was going down, I was taking every last person involved with it. I slipped out of the building, blending in with the people streaming out due to the fire alarm. The chaos worked in my favor. Nobody noticed me. Nobody had any reason to suspect I'd done anything other than evacuate like everyone else. But I had what I needed, and I was about to set a chain of events in motion that would destroy everything. Later that evening, after I'd calmed down, I knew exactly who to contact. There was a journalist I knew, an old friend who had a nose for stories like this, scandals involving rich and powerful people. He had taken down some big names before, and I knew he'd love to sink his teeth into this. I sent him a message, brief but clear. I've got something you'll want to see. It's big. Call me. When he did, I laid it all out for him. I didn't mention Emily. No, that part was personal, and I wanted to keep it that way. But I told him everything about the massage parlor, about the VIP clients, the hidden services, and I gave him the data I'd stolen. I told him to sit on it for now, but once the cops raided the place, I wanted it all out in the open. Names, details, everything. He was silent for a moment, then said, "This could make a lot of people very unhappy. But I'll do it." Satisfied, I hung up. The next step was easy. I dialed the number for the police, keeping my voice low, disguising it as best I could. It was an anonymous tip, and I told them everything. The location, the illegal activities, the VIP clientele, and even hinted at how deep this could go. I didn't mention Emily by name, of course. This was about more than just her now. It only took 15 minutes for the police to show up. I watched from a distance as squad cars rolled in, lights flashing. Officers piled out, heading straight for the front door. It was chaos all over again, but this time, it wasn't a drill. This time, it was real. The next few days were a whirlwind. The story blew up fast, thanks to my journalist friend. Once the raid was confirmed, he published everything. It made headlines almost immediately. The place was exposed for what it truly was, a front for prostitution, catering to high-paying clients who thought they could get away with anything. But not this time. The client list went public, and the fallout was swift. Names of politicians, businessmen, even a few local celebrities. They were all dragged through the mud. And as for the owners of that business, they were arrested within days. The police uncovered everything: illegal records, payments under the table, and all the services they had been hiding for years. The whole operation was torn apart, and the people who ran it were sent straight to jail. I should have felt relief, maybe even satisfaction. After all, I had gotten my revenge. The place that had torn my life apart was gone, and everyone involved was facing consequences. But as I sat there, scrolling through the news on my phone, reading about the raid and the arrests, there was a hollowness inside me. Emily, or Sabrina, whatever she wanted to call herself now, was part of that world. And no matter how much destruction I caused, no matter how many people I took down with me, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The fallout from everything that happened was swift and brutal. Once the story hit the news, there was no hiding it. No chance for Emily, or Sabrina as they called her, to explain away the truth. The leaked client list, the police raid, the exposed operation, it was all too much for her to avoid. The scandal wasn't just a local story anymore. People I hadn't spoken to in years were reaching out, asking if the rumors were true, asking if my wife was part of it. At first, I didn't want to tell anyone. It felt too personal, too raw. But the truth was already out there, and trying to hide from it wasn't going to change anything. Friends, neighbors, even some colleagues found out through the leaks. Her name didn't appear directly in the headlines, but the whispers, the rumors, they spread like wildfire. People talked. Our mutual friends, the ones who had been close to us for years, turned their backs on her almost immediately. They couldn't believe it. Some of them were genuinely shocked, asking me if it was really true. Others were quick to condemn her without even trying to understand. I wasn't sure if they were disgusted by her actions or just afraid of being associated with such a public mess. Either way, they cut her off entirely. Emily became a pariah, and I could see the weight of that judgment crushing her. As for me, I felt numb through most of it. The divorce process moved faster than I expected. Maybe it was because there was no saving face for her after everything came out, or maybe it was because I was so determined to be done with it. Either way, we didn't fight over much. I think we both knew there was no point. Emily tried at first to talk to me, to explain things, to apologize. But I wasn't interested in her explanations. I'd already made up my mind. I didn't need to hear why she'd done what she'd done. The betrayal was too deep for me to care about her reasons. We finalized the divorce quietly, and as far as I was concerned, that was the end of it. I didn't want to look back. I didn't want to dwell on what had happened. or what I had done in return. The revenge, the exposure, it had given me some satisfaction, but it didn't undo the damage. It didn't erase the feeling of being betrayed by someone I'd trusted for so long. After the divorce was finalized, I made a conscious decision to move on. I focused on my work, threw myself into staying busy, and tried to rebuild my life piece by piece. I didn't want to be the guy who let a failed marriage define him. I had too much ahead of me to stay stuck in the past. And surprisingly, things got better, slowly at first, but then all at once. The weight that had been hanging over me for so long started to lift. I reconnected with old friends, started going out more, and focused on being there for my kids. They were my priority, and I wanted to make sure they knew that no matter what had happened between their mother and me, I would always be there for them. Life started to look brighter. I felt like I could breathe again, like I wasn't constantly waiting for the next bomb to drop. I wasn't looking over my shoulder anymore, wondering what secrets were lurking in the shadows. I had faced them all, and I had come out on the other side. People asked me how I was doing, expecting me to be bitter or broken. But I wasn't. I told them I was fine, better than fine, actually, and it was true. I had survived the worst of it, and now I was moving forward. As for Emily, well, I don't know what she's doing now, and honestly, I don't care. We're no longer part of each other's lives, and that's how it needs to be. I've heard bits and pieces from mutual acquaintances. Apparently, she's trying to start over somewhere new, but it's hard to shake the stigma of what happened. She lost a lot in the fallout, and her reputation is probably damaged beyond repair. But that's her burden to carry, not mine. Me? I'm doing well now. I've got a new routine, new goals, and a clearer perspective on what matters. I'm not angry anymore. I don't dwell on what happened. I'll let it go. So, to anyone reading this, wondering if things ever get better after something like this, they do. It's not easy, and it doesn't happen overnight. But eventually, you find your footing again. You find yourself again. And to those who stood by me, who didn't turn their backs when the storm hit, thank you. I owe you more than I can say. As for the rest, well, life moves on, and so do I. Good luck to all of you.
My husband and I have 2 daughters, Erica 23 and Sarah 25. Much to my disappointment, they've never gotten along. Even as kids, they were always fighting. I'd always hoped they would grow out of it, but it never happened. I tried very hard to encourage them to grow together, as it's always my wish for them to be best friends and take care of each other when I'm gone. Unfortunately, nothing worked, and they seemed bent on hating each other. Some backstory. When Sarah moved out for college, she stopped talking to Erica entirely. This seemed really harsh to me, and I told her that. During this time, I grew closer with Erica as she was still at home, and Sarah seemed to want nothing to do with us. We were both hurt by Sarah's actions. When Erica went to college, Sarah appeared to make an effort to get along with her, and I was excited. But something happened. Sarah said that Erica was bullying her and blocked her on her phone. Erica told me that Sarah had blocked her, so I texted Sarah demanding to know why. Sarah said that Erica was name-calling her and blowing up her phone. I told Sarah she needed to get over it because family is family, and you can't just block family for no reason. It seemed very immature to me, and I was very annoyed. It's been about 2 years, and Sarah hasn't had a relationship with Erica since. Every time I see Sarah, I try to remind her that Erica loves her and tell her about the realities of the situation, that Sarah's successful, and Erica just gets jealous sometimes. But unfortunately, Sarah always seems upset when I bring up Erica and gets moody. Sarah's now getting married. At Sarah's engagement party, to which Erica was not invited, which disappointed me, I told Sarah that Erica was happy for her, but it was hard for her to have her sister be successful like this. Sarah seemed annoyed and brushed me off. Since the party, I've been trying to get a straight answer from Sarah about whether Erica's invited to the wedding. I brought it up a few times when Sarah talked about the wedding, and she ignored me. Eventually, she snapped at me and said that she hadn't had a relationship with Erica in many years, and she didn't know, quote, why you would expect her to be there. I was horrified. I believe Sarah's childish, vengeful antics have gone too far. You just don't treat family like this. Not inviting them to your wedding? My heart is broken, as I want them to care for each other, and I don't know why they refuse to do so. I want nothing to do with the wedding at this point. I'll attend, but I have no desire to help a daughter who treats family like this. I feel like Sarah's just asking me to pick between her and her sister, and I want nothing to do with it. My husband thinks I might be being a little harsh, but Erica agrees with my decision. Am I the idiot for refusing to pick between my daughters and not supporting my oldest decision not to invite her sister to the wedding? You are the idiot. Blocking family for no reason. She gave you a very detailed list of reasons. Why are you always making excuses for one child and brushing off all the issues of your other one? You often mention that you've encouraged your older daughter to be more respectful. However, you've mentioned exactly 0 times you've corrected your younger daughter's behavior or expected her to be nicer to her sister. Why is that? It's so pathetic that OP is playing dumb about not understanding why Sarah hates Erica. There's willful ignorance and there's denial. This is definitely the latter. She says she doesn't want to get involved in their fights, but she really means that she refused to do her job as a parent and expected shared DNA to fix all relationship problems. Now that she's reaping what she sowed, she's going all surprise Pikachu face. Makes me wonder what other issues the girls must have due to her ill-fit parenting. Wait, at Sarah's engagement party, rather than congratulating her, you told her it was hard for Erica to see her be successful? And you don't understand why you're the idiot? Erica seems to be your golden child for whatever reason. You need to butt out because your favoritism is not helping and will only push Sarah away from you. Yeah, OP's blaming Sarah for being more successful than Erica. That is a very bizarre take on the situation. Lady, it sounds like you're completely blind to your baby's faults, and you blame all the friction on the old one who should know better. But your younger daughter is persistently bratty and entitled, and you enabled this all the way. I wouldn't bet on your older daughter being desperately upset if you decided not to support the wedding. She's had no support from you so far in life, so why change now? I, 45 male, have a daughter, teen, Amy, and my wife, Amy's stepmother, 40, Diane, has recently taken issue with Amy. Diane does not respect Amy's privacy and has recently done a lot to invade it. She constantly barges into Amy's room and demands to check her phone frequently. I've told Diane she can't do this without asking Amy or me first, but she says she's as much Amy's mother as I am her father. 2 days ago, Diane went into Amy's room when she was at school and looked through Amy's diary. Her diary has a lock on it and was hidden, so I'm not sure how Diane got into it. When I returned from work, I found Amy in tears and my wife screaming at her, calling her disgusting names. When she saw me, she ran over to me, telling me that she'd read Amy's diary and found out she was gay and calling her names. I shouted at Diane for invading Amy's space because she knows teenagers need privacy and that her diary is necessary for her recovery. The therapist recommended she write down her feelings to help her anxiety. I got very angry, but Diane told me I should kick Amy out or send her to a conversion therapy course. I told her to get out, and after I threatened to call the police, she left. I'm receiving many calls from the family saying Diane is worried about Amy's future. I told them Diane was disgusting. Diane is very angry with me and told me she wants to take a break. Did I escalate the situation by kicking her out? Am I the idiot? Diane's stuff would be packed in on the front porch by the time the day was done if it was me. Diane is a witch, plain and simple. She's proven that she doesn't respect your position as husband or father. She certainly doesn't respect your daughter and her boundaries. She's shown her true colors by using homophobic slurs regarding your daughter and thinks there's something wrong with Amy? Not the idiot, OP. You absolutely did the right thing. You are an incredible dad and stood by your daughter. Kicking Diane out is step 1 and asking for a divorce is step 2. I don't think divorce should be invoked lightly, but dude, come on. Diane sounds like an awful person, and you have to protect your daughter. I mean, conversion therapy? But how long has she been invading Amy's privacy? It sounds like this isn't the first time she's busted into Amy's diary. I wonder how many under-the-radar type things she's done or said to or directed at your daughter over the years. Continue to protect your child at all cost. Get rid of that woman immediately. I cannot emphasize enough how much that experience will affect your daughter. I used to write about my late mom to cope with her loss, and later found out that my grandma would go through my room while I was gone and go through my journals. I'm still angry at my dad for not doing more about it, and I haven't been able to write about my feelings in the same way since. For the last 6 months, my 25 female girlfriend, Molly, 26, started with a joke that I've already made clear that I don't like. It consists of her saying no quickly to anything I ask. I ask her to get a glass of water for me. She says no. And after 1 minute, I'm almost getting up. She says she's joking and gets some water. I ask her to wash dishes. She says no. I say, I love you, but she says no. I ask her to take her clothes. She says no. Everything is joking. And after the 30 seconds to a minute, she does it. But she's addicted to saying no first. I've already made it clear several times that I don't like it. Even more so with the I love you. She's the only person I can say that to, so it's special to me. And there are serious things that I need her to answer seriously. And if she says no to everything jokingly, I can't tell when she's saying a real no. It's already happened. I keep saying this is boring and I don't like it. She stops doing it and goes back to doing it after a week. Finally, after a brief discussion, because she played this prank in front of our friends, me asking, "Love, can you get me some medicine?" and she with, "No, but kidding," she stopped doing it for 1 month. Yesterday, we welcomed my parents, in-laws, and our 2 best friends to our house. Everyone knew that I was going to propose to her, and I called them because we had always planned this proposal with our loved ones attending, participating in this special day. I asked her to marry me, and she said a quick no. And I was so grumpy and panicked and upset, everyone looking in shock for 30 seconds for her to laugh and say she was joking, finally saying yes. I was so embarrassed and disappointed. I put the ring box back in and said I'd take it out to cool off. I didn't even let her say anything. She kept texting me, no answering calls, saying it was just a joke, and I knew she always did that. She said that I left a difficult situation in the house because it was obvious that I had given up on proposing and did it in front of my parents and my in-laws. She stressed that I made the situation uncomfortable because of a silly joke. Well, I slept in a hotel and I'm still in it. My parents supported me, but my in-laws called me an idiot for giving up on proposing, disproportionately humiliating their daughter. I just really think there's time for jokes, and that moment wasn't clear. She knew I didn't like it and decided to do it anyway. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. Your girlfriend just learned a much-needed lesson on why you don't joke and say no when you mean yes. And you're not making the situation uncomfortable because of a silly joke. She is. She knows you don't like it. And honestly, who would? That would annoy the crap out of most people. But she did it anyway. What's next? Is she going to say no during your ceremony, jokingly? This whole thing, saying no immediately, was a thing kids did in the 90s. I remember it because I was a kid in the 90s. You would be like, "No, kidding," and then laugh because you were single digits old. How is an adult doing this, and why do they think it's funny? Not the idiot, but why would you sign up for this permanently? Seriously, I would overthink this whole relationship. Girlfriend will not change. Girlfriend does not respect your boundaries and feelings. She's shown you who she is, believe her. Then move on and find someone who does. Out of all the things that are wrong from her side, one that stands out to me the most is that afterward, she still puts the blame on you and doesn't even apologize. If you see that your partner is hurt by something you did, yes, even a joke, any well-adjusted human being would apologize. Also, if other people aren't laughing, I wouldn't call it a joke. And you're correct to think there's a time and a place for jokes. I can imagine how hurtful and embarrassing it was to hear the no to your proposal in front of your family. Such an idiot move. I, teen female, will admit I have and always will have a close relationship with my mom, 40. She's truly a fantastic woman. She has a great job and is honestly beautiful. Yet about a year ago, we found out my dad, 42, is having an affair with a woman who's now 26. She's only 10 years older than me. She and I have less of an age gap than my dad and she does. Even though upset, my mom has never trash talked my dad. I'm so upset though. It would have been one thing for him to ask for a divorce. Instead, he cheated with someone much younger than him. He and his affair moved out about 2 hours away. I've seen him about 5 times since this happened a year ago. I act pleasant when I see them, but things are awkward, and my dad's and my relationship is clearly strained. So my dad's affair partner's pregnant. He called me yesterday and asked if I wanted to attend the gender reveal party next weekend. I told him no. He asked why. I said I didn't want to talk about it. He kept pushing me, saying how the baby would be my little sibling. Finally, I got annoyed and went off. I told him how it would have been one thing for him to get a divorce from my mom, but he didn't have the guts for that. So instead you have an affair. So no, I'm not going to accept your little affair baby as a sibling. He called me an immature brat. He later texted my mom complaining about how immature I am and how I need to grow up and accept that, his mistress name, and the baby will be a part of my family. Am I the idiot? Oh wow, he has a lot of nerve to claim that you're immature, seeing as he had an affair with someone closer to your age than his. What exactly did he think was going to happen? Not the idiot. He didn't just cheat on your mother. He cheated on you too. He doesn't get to call you an immature brat when he chooses intimacy over you. He's only visited you 5 times, and he lives only 2 hours away? What is he, British? My sister lives 2 hours away, and we hang out at least once a month for a full fun weekend. Even if you wanted to accept your new half-sibling, you'd undoubtedly see them less, since your dad barely makes an effort to see you anyways, and you're only about 2 years shy of becoming an adult. You don't have time to have a relationship with them, especially not how your dad made it. OP, if your father's anything like mine, which, based on the cheating and calling you a brat, sounds like he is, you will be asked to babysit, for free, whenever you're around. This child would be born soon, before you legally become an adult. You're not going to have any relationship with your father's new family that you don't choose, and it sounds like you're not interested in having them in your life. That's perfectly fine. Can I make a suggestion? I know you're upset, but I highly recommend learning to laugh at him. LOL, he thinks you want a relationship with him when he's barely tried? LOL, he thinks you want the woman he cheated with in your life? LOL, he thinks you give a darn about his affair, baby? What a joke. Your dad's a joke. Treat him like one. Get therapy for yourself to work through the pain, but laugh in that man's face because he is hilarious for thinking he's still got any influence over you after this. My 29 female partner J, 31 male, wants me to include his best friend H, 36 female, as a bridesmaid in our wedding. H and I used to get along a couple of years ago, but she told J that she didn't like me a while back. I've never been rude to H, and I'm always polite and civil when she's over, especially for J's sake because I know that H is one of J's closest friends. I still talk to her and say hi and bye, but I don't class her as a friend, especially when she's polite to me but'll talk about me, saying how she doesn't like me behind my back. Jay and I recently got engaged, and we're currently fighting because he wants H to be a bridesmaid at our wedding, but I don't want her to be. I don't want someone to input opinion and be part of my hen's night, especially if she doesn't like me, because I want our wedding and the time leading up to it to be drama-free, and I know it'll just cause drama having someone who doesn't like me as part of my bride's party. Jay keeps insisting on getting H's opinions, and not my friends, who I want as a part of my wedding party, and he keeps getting angry and treating me like I'm the idiot for this. I've told Jay that if he wants her opinion to make her part of his wedding party, he won't. I then said we could possibly wait until closer to the wedding date to see if H and I become friends again, but I honestly don't feel as if that'll happen. I am starting to feel a bit like an idiot because it is his wedding, and maybe I should just put up with it for his sake. So, am I the idiot? Not the idiot, but it sounds like Jay values H's feelings more than he does yours. Are you certain there's nothing romantic there? The sudden turnaround of H being friendly to not liking you almost seems like you were maybe fine when things were casual, but she got jealous once you and Jay got serious. If he's going to stress you out about your wedding, but prioritize his bestie, this sets the tone for your entire marriage. Are you sure you want to be the second best to your husband? It doesn't even have to be romantic for there to be that jealous angle. Some people just hate it when they aren't someone's number one priority. This should be something people leave behind as they grow up, because they learned that they can't be possessive over people. But some people are still stuck in it. Sure, it's his wedding too. However, she's his friend, not yours. Honestly, what kind of partner would do this? Try to convince their SO to have a person that doesn't care about them to be their bridesmaid? OP, your partner doesn't sound kind, and it sounds like a big deal. He's keeping that friend that talks badly of you and forces them on you. He's not respecting any of your boundaries. I suggest you reflect on your relationship in its entirety. How does he treat you? Reflect and don't make excuses for him. Loving people don't need to be excused for their behavior all the time.
My wife cheated with her boss for years. Me brother's clever plan delivered the ultimate payback. During our final university year, while hanging out with friends, I encountered Sarah celebrating her 21st birthday at a local Nashville club. Literally colliding with her table as I walked by, I inadvertently spilled her drink into her lap. After a few awkward moments, I apologized, and as we conversed while cleaning up, I couldn't help but ponder the concept of love at first sight. Nevertheless, I believed a unique chemistry pulled us together like a magnet. From that night onward, we commenced dating and never spent time apart. A year later, we exchanged vows, marking the beginning of our shared life. I'm Jonathan, but my friends call me Johnny. Armed with an accounting degree, I became a certified public accountant at a prominent Atlanta firm, where Sarah and I settled near our family. After gaining experience in the corporate realm, I ventured out to establish my own firm. Sarah, holding a business administration degree, supported me during the initial 2 years until the joyous news of our daughter Angel's impending arrival. Our relationship mirrored a fairy tale with an enduring love that persisted as we welcomed Angel into our lives. Over the subsequent decade, we embraced the routine of a typical family life. Me focus on business growth, while Sarah managed household affairs and raised our daughter. Our bed life was a source of contentment, with a frequency of at least 3 times a week. Describing our connection as pure love, our feelings were deep and sensual, avoiding experimentation or intense encounters out of mutual respect. We found joy in our shared experiences. Sarah found pleasure in lingual stimulation, a preference I gladly fulfilled, though she reserved lingual pleasure for special occasions, happening less than times during our marriage. Content with our life, I refrained from pressuring her, cherishing the harmony in our relationship. Sarah's constant attentiveness, evident from the day we exchanged vows, manifested in kisses, hugs, and shared moments whenever we were together. The incredible closeness in our marriage filled every second with love. Despite friends' initial skepticism claiming our affection wouldn't endure, they eventually recognized the uniqueness of our bond. After a decade, when Angel turned, Sarah expressed her desire to return to work. With Angel's established routine and daily return from school at p.m., Sarah conveyed her reluctance to stay at home daily, expressing a yearning to rejoin the workforce. After extensive discussions, we reached an agreement and formulated a plan to ensure Angel received the attention a 10-year-old girl needed. Sarah secured a position as a personal assistant to William, a lawyer years her senior. The job's favorable hours allowed Sarah to be home by every day, maintaining her presence for Angel. Our family grew stronger over time, residing in a comfortable apartment within an upscale complex with country club membership. Our financial stability allowed us to save for Angel's college and our retirement. We lived a blessed life, free from health, financial, and happiness concerns. As expected, our bed life underwent changes after a decade of marriage, slowing down from 3 to 4 times a week to only twice, typically on Friday and Saturday nights. While we became somewhat predictable, our love endured, and we continued to revel in our closeness. Sarah's unwavering attentiveness and displays of love persisted throughout the years, making our shared closeness more fulfilling than our physical expressions of love. Receiving spontaneous kisses and hugs, along with acknowledgement for her love, overwhelmed me. It constituted the most significant aspect of our marriage. I reciprocated the affection, but Sarah consistently ensured I understood the depth of her love. Angel joined the math club, staying after hours and returning home around 5 p.m. Simultaneously, Sarah began working late 2 nights a week, coinciding with Angel's schedule. We avoided leaving her alone at that age, ensuring our schedules matched. William, Sarah's boss, earned a promotion to senior partner in his father-in-law's firm. Consequently, Sarah worked a few extra hours on Tuesday and Thursday nights, returning home by 7 p.m. On these nights, I ensured dinner was ready for her after her long workday. Other than those 2 nights, everything in our marriage remained unchanged. My business was thriving, generating a good income as the company expanded to employees. We became a well-known and respected accounting firm, becoming a target for acquisition or merger with larger firms in the area. Angel began contemplating college and her future. Sarah still worked for William and remained as attractive as when we first met. The years treated Sarah well, maintaining her slim figure, complemented by long, appealing legs and a shapely bum. Despite her attractiveness, she maintained a professional and conservative demeanor. Our lifestyle, deemed by some as boring, involved spending most of our time together at home, attending movies or family events with our daughter. We were always together as a family, never going out alone or without each other as a couple. I received a call from William, her boss, informing me that Sarah would be honored with an award at a banquet the next month, and both Angel and I were invited. I proudly accepted the invitation, revealing to Angel that her mother would receive an award for professional excellence. Since it was a surprise, they wanted us there, and usually these meetings were for staff only. We were asked to keep it a secret until the award ceremony. In the last 5 years since Sarah started working for William, she consistently delivered excellent work, contributing to her increased happiness at home and boosted self-esteem. I knew she worked hard and was well liked in her company, and now, hearing about their desire to show appreciation made Angel and me proud. Sarah informed us about an upcoming business meeting at the Ritz-Carlton downtown, where she had to work late and give a presentation to the entire company. She looked forward to it, having spent many hours preparing in the weeks leading up to the event. At the time, she was unaware of our invitation or her award, and Angel and I kept it a secret. We could hardly wait for the event and Sarah's award. I took Angel shopping for a new dress, and I bought a new suit to ensure she would be proud of her family at the award ceremony. Sarah wore a knee-length dress with a back cutout, balancing professionalism with showcasing her beautiful curves. At 37, she remained attractive and desirable. Before the limo picked her up to make arrangements for the meeting, Angel and I hugged her, wishing her luck for her evening presentation. With 2 hours to get ready after she left, we both dressed on time and left to be at the event about 30 minutes before Sarah's presentation. One of the hosts greeted us, seating us at a central table with a clear view of the stage. Angel and I received special treatment, with everyone expressing their love for Sarah and delight in meeting us. We felt so welcome and happy to be there for our wife and mother. The lights in the audience dimmed as the introductions began on stage. Spotlights flickered as the first speaker introduced the firm's founder, the CEO, and then William, the senior partner. William provided a concise overview of the company's successful year and then introduced Sarah, who was tasked with sharing some of the past year's achievements. Sarah graced the stage, radiating beauty as always, and I observed Angel's pride in seeing her mother commence the presentation with a professional and practiced voice. Sarah delved into the company's excellent year, its accomplishments, and future projects, speaking for approximately minutes before returning the stage to William. Before her departure, William embraced her, delivering a few words to the audience. He highlighted the close collaboration with Sarah over the past 5 years, emphasizing her integral role in the organization. He expressed conviction that some of the successes outlined wouldn't have been possible without her. William then honored Sarah with the Chairman's Club Award, the company's highest honor, reserved for employees going above and beyond the call of duty and recognized for their commitment. Sarah received a sizable plaque and an envelope containing an award. With tears in her eyes, she accepted the check, embraced William, expressed gratitude to the audience, and turned to Angel and me. Our eyes welled with tears as we shared the pride in her mother's achievements, and those at our table offered hugs, creating one of our most joyful evenings, overflowing with pride and unable to suppress our smiles. We headed for a drink as the lights came on. Taking my daughter's glass, I assured her I'd be right back. At the bar, amidst long lines, I spotted an empty one near the stage and decided to fetch a double Jack and a soft drink for Angel. In high spirits, I threw $1.05 into the tip jar, collected my drinks, and turned to return to my table. It was precisely at that moment when my world fell apart. On the way back, something caught my eye, leading me to witness a couple behind the curtains engaged in an alarming embrace. Initially deeming it out of place for such an event, I recognized the dress the same one Sarah had worn that night. I turned once more, frozen in place, observing the couple sharing a heartfelt kiss. The embrace conveyed a familiarity beyond the moment, suggesting this wasn't their first encounter. It felt as if I were having an out-of-body experience, standing frozen with 2 drinks in hand and my mouth agape. I watched until the couple separated, confirming that it was indeed the love of my life sharing a romantic kiss with her boss, William. In that moment, I dropped one of the drinks, drawing the lover's attention. Sarah saw me and appeared shocked. As I returned to my senses, I turned and walked back to the table with the remaining drink. Sarah caught up, explaining the situation, and in a daze, I nodded and sat quietly with a sorrowful expression for the remainder of the evening. It was evident that I was distressed and no longer able to share in the joy around us. I witnessed more than a friendly kiss. In fact, Sarah and I hadn't kissed so passionately in years over 5, to be exact. Reflecting on those years and the changes that had occurred, I sensed trouble looming, though I wasn't certain of its nature at that point. Driving home, Angel and Sarah discussed the night, with Angel expressing pride in her mother. Still reeling from what I'd seen, I remained silent, lost in my own thoughts. Both girls noticed my reticence, attempting to coax me into conversation, but I maintained a persistent silence. Sarah, sensing the unease, tried to make amends with sweetness and extra affection. But I wasn't receptive. That night I made an effort to conceal my emotions from Angel, however. Being perceptive, she sensed my distress and sensibly allowed me to be with my thoughts. Before bedtime, she expressed her support, mentioning that she was available for a conversation. After a hug and a kiss, she went to bed. I silently withdrew, and shortly thereafter, Sarah joined me in the room. She inquired about my well-being, expressing concern despite her attempt to comfort me. After a minute of silence, I chose to turn away. Apologizing for the situation, she pleaded for communication, but I lay silent, anger replacing my initial shock. I refrained from speaking, realizing any words would be hurtful and unproductive. That night, her attempts at affection went unanswered, and I endured the worst sleep. The next morning, a Saturday, I opened my eyes to sunlight, anticipating a challenging day. Recalling the distressing scene, I tried to make sense of the situation. Climbing out of bed, I went to the bathroom, washed and brushed my teeth. Returning to the bedroom, Sarah sat up in bed, watching me and trying to act normal. "Good morning, sweetheart. Did you sleep well?" she asked, as if nothing had happened. I ignored her question, donned a pair of jeans and a t-shirt, and before leaving the bedroom, I looked at her. Speaking to her for the first time since the kiss, I turned to her with a hateful look and uttered, "How long?" She didn't answer, merely looking at her hands. I left her, heading out for breakfast and some time to think, ending the conversation. Feeling a little distraught, I anticipated changes and dreaded hearing what she was going to tell me about her affair. She knows she has to tell me the truth because she knows if she lies, I'll know. Sarah and I have been very close, and she has never given me any reason to believe that she wants another man. I haven't noticed any change in her closeness, and she still hugs and kisses me all the time. How can she act like that when she's having an affair? I mean, if she's with him, how can she show me all this love? Can the woman I love really have an affair with William? I glanced at the clock, aware that Angel was supposed to be at school for math club by 1 p.m. Realizing it was time to face it, I drove home and found Sarah on the patio with a cup of coffee, staring out at the lake. Without saying a word, I poured myself a cup, sat down next to her, and asked her those two words again, "How long?" After a few minutes of silence, I noticed tears running down Sarah's face. The revelation that followed sent a shiver down my spine and caused a stomachache so intense that I almost felt nauseous. In a soft, tearful voice, she mentioned a span of 3 years. I inquired, seeking confirmation, and she affirmed, mentioning the nights I worked late. "Yes," she whispered. I sat in silence for a few minutes before finally breaking it. My attempt at understanding led to the conclusion that the 2 nights she worked late every week for the last 3 years were the only times she had been lovemaking with William. Seeking clarification, I asked if my understanding was correct. She affirmed, stating they had never engaged in such activities anywhere else, and expressing a desire to explain more when given the chance. I expressed my response, urging her to withhold any explanations. She had just disclosed her involvement with her boss 2 nights a week for the past 3 years. The arithmetic was simple, over instances, assuming a minimum of twice a night. I confronted Sarah, emphasizing the gravity of her actions over times of betrayal behind my back. I questioned the possibility of any man enduring such knowledge. Tears streamed down her face onto her lap as I continued. The depth of my hurt unfolded as I reflected on the potential mockery they shared, picturing them laughing at my ignorance. Expressing my gratitude with bitter sarcasm, I acknowledged the profound humiliation and intentional pain she inflicted. The person I believed loved me had betrayed our marriage and shattered my heart, an unexpected and devastating revelation that left me profoundly wounded. She insisted, saying it wasn't as it seemed. I didn't buy it. Disrupting her attempt to explain, I instructed her to be silent. Ignoring her pleas, I stood up and left the porch as she remained seated, crying and begging for me to stay. I maintained a composed exterior, however, internally, I felt an explosion of emotions. To gain control over my turbulent feelings, I went for a ride. The sense of betrayal was unfamiliar and overwhelming, and I needed time to process her words and decide on my course of action. I needed to talk to someone, and the only family I had left was my brother Tony. We were very close growing up, but we took different paths in life. Tony spent 5 years in a federal prison for medication trafficking and moved in dangerous circles. By comparison, I was a churchgoer, an accountant who paid too much in taxes and didn't even have a parking ticket. Tony and I didn't talk very often, but growing up, Tony always looked to me for support. I was there for him during his trial, and thanks to my political contacts, was able to get his sentence reduced from the mandatory 20 years to 5 years. That morning, I called him. I inquired about Tony's well-being and caught up with him. Subsequently, I disclosed the challenging situation I was confronting. Of course. What's up? I conveyed the difficulty of the situation, disclosing that Sarah had cheated on me and that I had just discovered it. Experiencing hurt and pain, I detailed how I was aimlessly driving around and emphasized the necessity of talking to someone. I apologized for burdening him with my problems. Oh man, I love Sarah, and I can't believe she did this. Do you know who did it yet and what exactly? Acknowledging his disbelief and love for Sarah, I admitted that I knew who was involved but lacked all the details. I disclosed that it wasn't a one-time occurrence and expressed a strong desire for revenge against the person responsible. The intense anger I felt even made me contemplate damaging my wife. Tony offered his advice, drawing on the experiences of many friends who had gone through similar situations. He urged me to release my anger by engaging in physical activities like going to the gym or jogging. He emphasized the importance of calming down and allowing him to assist me in navigating through the challenges. Tony encouraged me to confront the situation by gathering all available information and deciding on a course of action. He assured me of his support in executing any plans I formulated, advising me to keep my words minimal and act as normally as possible. He acknowledged the difficulty of the task. Finally, he instructed me to call him the next day with updates, assuring me of his continued assistance. Expressing gratitude, I thanked Tony for his help and conveyed my intention to call him the following day, bringing our conversation to an end. On the drive, I passed a mattress store and had my first idea. I parked in the lot and made the first move. I had no intention of leaving the marriage until Angel was in college, which meant I'd be married for the next 2 years. There was no way I was going to sleep with Sarah again, and I'd be damned if I left my bedroom. So I had my first action plan, which made me realize there was a lot more to do. After meeting with the salesperson, I told them I'd pay full price if they could deliver the 2 full-size beds I had just picked out, along with all the furniture, including the headboard and all the hardware and assembly. I paid an extra $100 to have the current king-size bed dismantled. We arranged delivery for 4 p.m. that afternoon. I texted Angel to let her know I'd pick her up, drove to her school, and waited in the parking lot. We went to lunch, and I gently explained to her that there would be some changes in the house in the near future. During our conversation, Angel inquired about the events at dinner the previous night, expressing her awareness that something had occurred. She requested not to be kept in the dark, emphasizing the importance of maintaining the honesty we had always shared. In response, I acknowledged the fairness of her request, recognizing the difficulty of the situation and her right to know. I revealed that I had observed her mother and her boss kissing backstage, offering the perspective that it might have been a congratulatory gesture. I downplayed the significance of the kiss, suggesting it shouldn't be a cause for intense anger. Following my confrontation with her mother, she admitted to having an affair with him for 3 years, a revelation that I found difficult to comprehend. I conveyed that this revelation had forever changed our relationship. Angel then questioned whether I intended to divorce her mother. I explained to Angel that I hadn't decided on divorce yet and that I was still working through the situation. I reassured her we would remain married, but things would be different. I emphasized the importance of her being strong and not taking sides, reminding her that her mother loved her. I acknowledged the mistakes her mother and I had made, but expressed the desire for Angel's life not to be adversely affected by them. I asked her not to judge us and to understand that we loved her more than anything. Throughout this conversation, she was in tears. She was aware that revealing the truth had caused me pain, and though I didn't want her to feel guilty, she insisted it was necessary for Angel to understand why our lives were changing. When we returned home together, Sarah was surprised. Judging by Angel's expression, it was clear that I had shared the information. Angel, in response, gave her mother a disdainful look and retreated to her room without uttering a word. I explained to Sarah that Angel had a right to know, and it was crucial for her to comprehend the reasons behind the impending changes in our household. I suggested that Sarah explain things to Angel once she overcame the initial shock. Concerned about the future, Sarah inquired if I planned to divorce her. I assured her that it wasn't an immediate consideration, as I wanted to observe how things unfolded, especially considering Angel's well-being. However, I affirmed that significant changes were inevitable beginning from that day. Sarah pleaded with me to allow her to explain and implored me to understand, emphasizing that she loved me and that we were husband and wife. I confronted Sarah, pointing out that she had willingly engaged in an affair with William over 500 times without my knowledge. I expressed my disbelief that she believed there was anything she could say to gain acceptance from a self-respecting man. I questioned her perception of my strength and suggested that she hadn't thoroughly considered the consequences of her actions. I revealed that what truly hurt me was the loss of the closeness that I had once cherished and looked forward to. I declared that I could no longer share that closeness with her, and I conveyed the impact it would have on me emotionally. I stated that I would no longer go to bed with her or make love, and I expressed the sorrow I felt in losing the small gestures of affection like kisses and hugs. Acknowledging the inevitability of changes in our relationship due to her breach of marriage vows, I declared that, like her, I would no longer be faithful and would seek other lovers. This was a departure from my previous stance, as I had never considered such actions before. I concluded by asserting that she could continue seeing her lover because she would no longer receive anything from me. It was as if she had received a blow on the head and physically withdrew from my remarks. She lost her balance and dropped onto the couch, startled. Sarah had obviously not realized the consequences of her infidelity. I communicated to Sarah that I couldn't agree to remain faithful after her betrayal, considering the magnitude of her actions. I expressed my intention to seek other relationships, a decision influenced by the pain caused by her cheating, lying, and infidelity. As the conversation unfolded, the doorbell rang, providing a timely interruption. I welcomed the installers who had arrived to remove our shared bed. I explained to Sarah that as a result of our strained relationship, I had purchased 2 new beds to replace the old one. The installation process was already in progress. Sarah questioned the presence of the installers and the reason behind the changes. I clarified that, since I had decided never to share a bed with her again, it wouldn't be fair for either of us to move into the guest room. Therefore, I had bought 2 separate beds. Our current bed was being removed, and new ones were being set up. I informed her about the option to exchange her mattress within 90 days if she didn't like the one I had chosen. In response to these revelations, Sarah inquired with surprise, "We're going to sleep in separate beds?" I explained to Sarah that it wouldn't be fair for either of us to give up our shared bedroom, especially since our closeness had come to an end. I expressed disbelief at the situation and the necessity for the changes that were taking place. In response, I reminded Sarah of her affair with her boss, emphasizing that it had occurred over 500 times behind my back. I watched as the men removed the bed we had shared for years, feeling a mix of pain and regret. The regret stemmed from being married to someone who had betrayed me so profoundly. The following day, I called my brother Tony, revealing the shocking truth about Sarah's affair with her boss. I expressed my astonishment at the revelation that she had been involved with him twice a week for the past 3 years, amounting to over 500 instances. I admitted to feeling blindsided and humiliated, uncertain about how to proceed. I sought information about the identity of the man involved in the affair. I disclosed to my brother Tony the identity of Sarah's boss, William Aston, and expressed my deep dissatisfaction with the situation. Tony sympathized, acknowledging the unfortunate circumstances. I then shared my desire for William to experience significant suffering for his role in the affair. Tony asked about my plans regarding Sarah, and I expressed my intention to divorce her once our daughter Angel was in college. I revealed my plan to make her life difficult until then, shutting her out and ensuring a lonely existence. I emphasized my determination to expose her actions and ruin her career if she attempted to initiate a divorce before Angel started college. Concerned for my well-being, Tony offered to take care of William Aston while I managed affairs at home. I cautioned him against engaging in any activities that could lead to legal trouble and insisted on handling my situation responsibly. Tony assured me that he understood and promised not to take actions that could jeopardize his own safety. We concluded the conversation with the understanding that we would talk again soon. The following weeks were stressful at home. Sarah tried to engage me in conversation, but I refused to answer her with more than a word or two. I could tell she was frustrated and tried to help me forgive her, but I was still hurt, angry, and unyielding. I buried myself in work, came home late every night, and wasn't home on the weekends. Tensions were high and everyone was walking on eggshells, waiting for me to explode. One night, after a long day at work, I came home and found Sarah in her bed, waiting to talk to me. After all these years of sleeping with the only woman I loved, I was now sleeping in a bed just a few feet away from Sarah's. It was sad, and I wasn't sure how I was going to do this for the next 2 years until Angel left for university. After my shower, as I lay down in bed, Sarah initiated a conversation, asking about my day. I responded briefly with a simple, "Good." She expressed a desire to discuss some matters and acknowledged that she knew I wanted nothing to do with her. Despite that, she conveyed her love for me and expressed a willingness to make small improvements in our relationship. She proposed the idea of quitting her job, suggesting that we didn't need the extra money and that she could be more present for me. She asked for my thoughts on the matter. Despite my efforts to control my anger, her attempt to use terms of closeness triggered a rage in me. I sat up and spoke harshly, expressing indifference to her decisions and urging her to do whatever she wanted with her life. I made it clear that I no longer wanted any romantic involvement with her. Tears welled in my eyes as I conveyed the emotional impact of her actions. As I rolled over and rested my head on the pillow, I heard Sarah sobbing, realizing the depth of the pain I felt. She pleaded for an opportunity to talk, acknowledging the sorrow and regret she felt for her actions. She expressed her continued love for me, the anguish caused by our lack of physical connection, and the heartbreak from the perceived coldness between us. She confessed her uncertainty about how to fix the situation, but emphasized her desire to salvage the relationship. Sarah also mentioned the toxic tensions in the house and expressed concern for our daughter, Angel, who seemed affected by the strained atmosphere. She suggested the idea of counseling to find a way to coexist without hatred, urging me to consider it for Angel's sake, as her departure from the home was imminent. I sighed, acknowledging the fairness in Sarah's concern for Angel, realizing that our daughter was going through a difficult time. After a brief pause, surprising Sarah, I agreed to attend therapy, emphasizing that my motivation was solely for Angel's benefit, not Sarah's. Sarah, visibly moved, interpreted this as progress, and her tears shifted from sorrow to happiness. The following evening, Sarah informed me that she had found a therapist and planned to meet with her individually the next day. She mentioned arranging a couples meeting for Friday at 3 p.m., recognizing the necessity to find a way to coexist without a prolonged divorce process. I agreed with Sarah's decision and acknowledged that living in peace was essential. Angel expressed excitement upon learning about the counseling sessions, hopeful that they might bring her family back together. Her smile, absent for weeks, reappeared. Sarah shared the news with me, stating that Angel was pleased about my agreement to attend couples counseling. Every night after work, I dined alone, intentionally avoiding spending time with Sarah. However, the absence of my daughter, my Angel, during these moments left a void. I longed for the warmth of her smile, the comfort of her hugs, and the endearing way she called me Daddy. Despite my desire to distance myself from Sarah, the yearning for a connection with my daughter tugged at my heart. Sarah went to her solo counseling session and was wiped out that evening. When I got home, I found that she had been crying, and I realized that it was probably hard to tell someone that they had cheated on our family for years. Somehow, I had no sympathy or compassion for the woman who had broken my heart. My brother Tony called me later that week to tell me what was going on. He explained that he was still owed some favors from his former acquaintances, and that the debt they owed him was not in cash, but in favors for what he had done for them. He told me not to bother, that everything was in control. After contacting one of his associates, Tony explained the situation. They understood and told him they would take care of it and let him know when it was done. Tony explained that they did want to hurt him, and they wanted to leave it so he would remember it for the rest of his life. He left it in their hands, and he knew it was not going to be pretty. Tony gave them the man's name, the place where he worked, and his phone number. That was all they needed. I guess when Sarah told William that I had found out about their affair, he was heartbroken. He loved Sarah and the way she made him feel. Apparently, they considered themselves a couple when they were together and shared their love during that brief time alone. After their affair became a habit, neither of them believed that their few hours a week could hurt anyone. They were simply two friends spending some time together. Both believed that their spouses never gave up anything or missed their love and time. It was only a few hours a week, and neither spouse missed their short time together. It was the perfect relationship that gave them the excitement and extra love that had been blunted by many years of marriage. After the initial meeting with Dr. Winters, the counselor, our session commenced as expected. The counselor took the lead in initiating the conversation. She addressed me, expressing gratitude for my attendance, and acknowledged that Sarah had already shared her perspective during their meeting earlier in the week. Dr. Winters emphasized the importance of honesty in my responses and assured me that everything discussed during the sessions would remain confidential. She encouraged openness, reassuring me that nothing I said would be shocking to her. I nodded in acknowledgement, curious to see how the session would unfold. The counselor, Dr. Winters, prompted Sarah to share her intentions for the counseling sessions. Sarah, my unfaithful wife, turned her attention toward me, her eyes filled with tears, and expressed her desires. She conveyed a strong longing to communicate with me, rebuild our family, and restore the physical and emotional connection we once had. Her emotions were palpable, and I sensed the sincerity in her words. Although it was difficult to witness her pain over the loss of my love, I maintained composure, sitting quietly as she wiped her eyes with a handkerchief. When asked by the doctor about my goals for the sessions, I expressed a desire to eliminate the haunting significance of the number 500 from my thoughts. I noticed Sarah's reaction, a wince and averted gaze as I mentioned the number. In response to Dr. Winters' confusion about the number's significance, I adopted a sarcastic tone. Referencing Sarah's prior session with the counselor, I questioned Sarah about omitting this detail, prompting the counselor to request a more coherent explanation. I clarified that, being an accountant, numbers held particular importance to me. I revealed that over the past 3 years, Sarah had engaged in intimate activities with William over 500 times without my knowledge. This revelation had left an indelible mark on my consciousness, making it the first thing that came to mind whenever the number 500 appeared. After each outburst, a period of silence ensued as emotions settled. The counselor, addressing me as Mr. Park, expressed understanding of my pain but cautioned against using hurtful language. I offered an apology, acknowledging the necessity of expressing my pain and perspective. Sarah, in tears, repeated her apologies, and my anger subsided as I finally relaxed. In response to the counselor's question, I expressed a desire to find a path toward forgiveness for Sarah. My ultimate goal was to create a home devoid of hate and anger, especially for the sake of our daughter. I emphasized the need to live together in peace, recognizing the impact on our family. I thanked the counselor for the opportunity to share my sentiments. Over the next few weeks, I managed to speak in a friendly tone without the venom. Things at home were much better, not good, but better. Angel was home more often. We went out to eat, went to the movies, went out with friends, and tried to be a normal couple. The only problem was that everyone noticed there was no closeness between us at all. I never held her hand, we never kissed, and I never let her hug or touch me. Several friends asked Sarah what was wrong because our affection was the exact opposite of what everyone had seen in the last 15 years. It was obvious that we were having a hard time, but we kept going. 2 weeks into our initial couples session, there was an intrusion at William's residence. Unidentified men entered, swiftly administered a beating without disclosing their motive, and promptly left. William was later taken to the hospital. Upon learning about William's incident, Sarah was thunderstruck, aware that I desired revenge and was somehow involved. That night, recounting how someone broke into her boss's house and attacked him, Sarah watched for a reaction. A small grin flitted across my face as I responded, "Wow, that's something," and resumed reading the book in front of me. Struck by my indifferent response, Sarah's inquiry about my feelings for William struck a nerve. Looking up, I glared at her and retorted, "Oh, I am so sorry your lover got hurt. Do you want me to send him flowers? Or should we go see him, darling?" She looked away and the conversation ended. Sarah sensed my responsibility for the incident and knew that expressing remorse for William could undo all the progress we had made. Earlier in the week, I received a text from Tony with a thumbs-up emoji, marking our last contact for several months. As things cooled down, I wondered if the police would uncover their affair and question me about the attack, but that never transpired. The police put the report on an open case file and shifted their focus to other crimes. Several months passed, and as promised, I began dating and going out late. After Sarah quizzed me about my activities a few times, she realized she should mind her own business and avoid causing problems. I clarified that we were husband and wife in name only, cohabiting for the sake of our daughter. We eventually found a way to remain civil and family life was improving. Sarah finally comprehended the extent of the hurt she had caused her husband, acknowledging the irreparable nature of the damage. To keep the family intact, I warned her that I would inform her family and friends about her affair and make her life unbearable if she pursued a divorce before Angel left for college. Sarah remained legally married but emotionally alone. She lacked someone to reciprocate the love she once gave through hugs, kisses, and affection. Defining her relationships with 2 men, this love was now lost. Despite attending counseling alone, her husband's enjoyment with another woman intensified her sadness. Sarah, driven by vanity, selfishness, and stupidity, had destroyed her marriage and the man she loved. Angel, despite still loving her mother, reminded her that she had brought this upon herself every time she complained about her father. Angel would never forgive her mother for hurting her father, but her love for her mother endured. After Angel left for college, I returned home with divorce papers. A year earlier, I had contemplated ruining Sarah's finances, but I opted for an equitable split. Over the last 2 years, I forgave her, but the love I once felt was irretrievably lost. Sarah, unsurprised by the divorce papers, signed them without protest, relieved at the prospect of starting anew. Having learned her lesson, she vowed never to cheat again. The painful divorce from the woman I loved left me full of remorse for the events leading to our separation. I yearned to undo it all or find a way to forgive her, but the memory of the 500 betrayals haunted me. We sold the house and divided the equity. I moved in with Trisha, a dancer years my junior, whom I had been dating. My confidence and happiness restored, I finally found peace. Sarah never abandoned hope for reconciliation and wept for weeks upon learning of my marriage to another woman. Unable to forgive herself for the damage caused by her selfishness and hubris, she dated but never recovered the lost love. Weight gain, faded looks, and bitterness characterized her lonely life. Angel and Sarah maintained closeness, but my communication with Sarah dwindled. She would never relive the love shared with her wonderful husband and bore the pain she inflicted on her loved ones. Ensuring Angel's college was funded, she became a psychologist, driven to help others. She now enjoys a happy married life. The lessons learned from this experience are profound, illustrating the lasting impact of a beautiful yet damaging past.
Kevin Riley unlocked the front door, took off his shoes, and walked to the kitchen. He had just driven his wife, Carrie, to the airport for her bi-weekly 3-day business trip. She worked as a secretary for Bradley Knox III, whom Kevin mockingly called Trey. Carrie always reminded him that her boss disliked him. "Kevin, Bradley can't stand you," Carrie would say. Kevin never admitted it, but he enjoyed using the nickname because he didn't like Bradley, finding him insincere. Checking his watch, Kevin saw it was only 7:30 a.m. He had time for another cup of coffee and to check his email before heading to the store. Though not a big fan of computers, he used email to stay in touch with friends from trade school, where he studied diesel mechanics. Now in his 30s, Kevin was one of 3 head mechanics at a heavy equipment firm. Despite his position, he still worked hands-on with his team. Although his job occasionally required overtime and travel, it was less frequent than Carrie's trips. She had been at Crosby & Knox for 6 months, moving up from a real estate clerk to a higher-paying legal secretary after completing advanced training. Kevin and Carrie met in college over 8 years ago and have been married for 6 years. They bought their house after saving up while starting their careers. Kevin had just started at the store, and Carrie was a secretary at a local real estate firm. Their combined efforts allowed them to put a down payment on their home. After his coffee, Kevin went to the spare bedroom to use the computer, hoping it was still on since Carrie had used it earlier. He smiled at the screensaver photo from their vacation in Cancun, showing them tan and happy on a beach. He had wanted a more private photo as the screensaver, but Carrie vetoed the idea. Kevin clicked to remove the screensaver and saw an email from Carrie's work account on the screen. Curious, he noticed the word underwear in the email. Wondering why it was there, he realized their modem had likely malfunctioned again, as it often did, requiring a reset. Kevin jerked his hand away from the modem and froze, reading the email his wife received from her boss. The message was brief but devastating. "Carrie, I hope I catch you before you leave. I really want you to bring that black bra I gave you on our last trip with the teal accents. You didn't get a chance to wear it for me. My first meeting with the governor isn't until 2 p.m., so we might have time for you to wear it. And I took it off for you this morning, Bradley." He reread the email multiple times, but its meaning was clear. Carrie was having an affair with her boss, Trey. Kevin sat stunned, opening and closing his mouth like a goldfish. Finally, he staggered to his feet and pushed his chair hard enough to hit the wall. Kevin remembered seeing the bra in Carrie's drawer when she packed, but now it was gone. Hoping it was a sick joke, he checked all her drawers, but the bra was missing. He recalled Carrie saying she bought it on sale at Victoria's Secret, but she had never worn it for him. Desperate for an explanation, Kevin sat on the edge of the bed, trying to rationalize the email. Carrie had always been loving and their relationship strong, with no signs of infidelity. He couldn't believe she was cheating. Kevin returned to the computer, hoping to find more information. He rebooted the modem and searched her email account. After scanning her inbox, he found a folder labeled Personal, filled with messages from her boss. He opened the first message, reading it twice as his face turned pale. He printed the letter and called in sick to work, unable to focus. For the next hour, Kevin read and printed more messages, forwarding copies to his personal email. As he finished, tears filled his eyes. He realized his marriage was over. After one last check of Carrie's email at Crosby & Knox and finding nothing else, Kevin logged out of her corporate account and switched to his own. He created a separate folder for all the forwarded messages and changed his password to keep them secure. Shutting down the computer, he took the printed messages and his now cooled coffee back to the kitchen. Grabbing a beer from the fridge, he sat at the kitchen table and reread the messages, surprised at how much they revealed about Carrie and Trey's trips to the state capitol. Carrie had only been at her new job for a week when she was told she'd need to accompany Trey to the Capitol. The firm lobbied the governor's office and represented clients in state courts, so it seemed honorable at first. Kevin now realized Trey likely targeted Carrie from the start, with some trips being unnecessary for business. Carrie soon began volunteering for these trips, and Kevin suspected Trey seduced her on the second trip, if not the first. The first email in her personal folder was Trey's reply to her thanking him for a Gucci purse and a wonderful dinner, hinting at their night together. Kevin remembered Carrie showing him the purse, claiming it was a $40 knockoff from a mall kiosk. Her deception and ease in lying made him nauseous. The correspondence between Carrie and Trey was frequent, usually around their trips. Kevin discovered they stayed at the same hotel, booking 2 rooms, and Carrie would join Trey after Kevin's nightly call. Their jokes about his predictability hurt deeply. Kevin learned more about Carrie's deceit from other emails. For instance, the expensive diamond earrings she wore to the Christmas party were a gift from Trey, though she claimed they were cubic zirconia. Trey's thank you note for an extravagant gift from Carrie implied she went beyond mere gratitude. One email mentioned Trey's condominium, triggering Kevin's memory of Carrie mentioning her boss's place overlooking the river park. It seemed likely they met there during the day, under the pretense of work or during lunch, with Carrie careful to hide any evidence. By noon, Kevin had reread all the letters and knew he needed to decide what to do before Carrie returned with Trey. She usually flew in early Friday morning, taking a cab home and calling Kevin at work to confirm her safe arrival. Ironically, the biggest danger had already caught up with her while she was away. Kevin grabbed 2 more beers and stretched out on the living room couch, realizing almost 5 hours had passed since he dropped Carrie off at the airport to meet her lover. Kevin realized they must have planned this carefully since he rarely saw Trey when he took Carrie to the airport. Occasionally, Trey was in the departure lounge, but always ignored them. By 6 p.m., Kevin was barely conscious, having visited the bathroom and kitchen multiple times to get more beer. When he went for another beer and found the fridge empty, he saw the 12 empty bottles on the table. He had finished both packs he bought the day before. Exhausted and having eaten nothing, he needed sleep. He managed to reach the bed and passed out fully clothed. At 10:15 p.m., the phone woke him from a haze of memories of happier times with Carrie. He guessed it was her calling to check why he hadn't called her at the Hyatt Inn. Everything he'd learned came rushing back, and he decided to wait until she got home to confront her. The answering machine picked up just as he answered. "Hello, is that you, Carrie?" "Yes, it's me," she replied. "Why didn't you call? You always do. Is something wrong?" He heard concern in her voice and almost lashed out, but held back. "I'm sorry, Carrie. I fell asleep." "What's wrong? You've never done this before," she insisted. Kevin almost confessed, but instead said, "I had a couple of beers after work, and I guess they knocked me out." He went on the offensive. "So how was your day? Busy this morning? Hope Trey isn't too hard on you." Carrie hesitated. "No, I wasn't busy. Why do you ask? You never ask about my work here." "Just curious. How are things going for you? Are you doing well?" he pressed. "Of course. Why are you asking that?" she replied nervously. "Just kidding. I trust you completely," he lied. Carrie seemed uneasy. "Of course you do. You've never said anything like that before." "Forget about it. I didn't mean anything by it. I'll probably go to bed. The beer's making me sleepy." "Okay, Kevin, get a good night's sleep. Love you." Kevin couldn't say those words back. "Okay, I will. Goodbye, Carrie." He hung up and went to the bathroom, then sat by the phone, waiting 15 minutes before calling the Hyatt Inn and asking for room 612. After a dozen rings, he hung up, not surprised when no one answered. He suspected they were making fun of him, planning to get him to call earlier. Realizing they were probably having fun without him brought tears to his eyes, and he stumbled back to bed. The next morning, he didn't feel too guilty about his overindulgence. After a shower, he felt well enough to go to work, but couldn't stop thinking about Carrie. He performed his tasks robotically, his coworkers noticing his distraction. Relieved when the day ended, he picked up burgers and fries on the way home, food he usually avoided, and washed them down with 2 beers. Knowing he couldn't drink like this every night, he left the second 6-pack untouched. At 8 o'clock, Kevin called room 612 at the Hyatt Inn, but no one answered after 10 rings. Based on previous emails, he knew Carrie was usually in the room from 9:30 to 10 o'clock for his nightly calls. Experimenting, he called every half hour, making his 4th call at 9:25. Each time, no one answered. Finally, at 9:45, Carrie picked up on the second ring. "Hey, Kevin, you're calling just in time. I was about to get under the covers, but waited for your call," she laughed. "I didn't sleep tonight, Carrie. Just watching TV and waiting to call you." "How did you spend your evening?" he asked, trying not to sound suspicious. "Same here, Kevin, just watching TV. Took a long hot bath earlier," she replied, seeming unaware of his suspicions. "That's good. You should be well rested for tomorrow night. We'll need to keep you busy when you get back." She giggled. "Already making plans, huh? I can't wait." After a few more minutes of small talk, Kevin ended the call. "I have a couple more things to do before bed. See you tomorrow." "Bye, sweetie. Looking forward to tomorrow night. Love you." Kevin hung up without responding. He waited another 15 minutes before calling room 612 again, and once more, no one answered after 10 rings. The next day, Kevin went to work but left early after lunch to be home when Carrie arrived from the airport. He knew they wouldn't spend the night under the same roof and was prepared for one of them to leave. Home by 1 o'clock, he waited patiently, feeling an emptiness inside but determined to maintain his dignity. Reflecting on their life together, all he remembered were the good times. The recent discoveries seemed unreal. He was at the kitchen sink when he heard the front door open and Carrie's luggage rolling down the hallway. She appeared in the kitchen, initially surprised to see him. "Kevin, what are you doing here? Why aren't you at work?" she asked, her surprise turning to concern. "I've been waiting for you, Carrie," he replied calmly, emotionlessly. "Why?" she asked, looking more concerned. Instead of answering, he threw a stapled bundle of letters on the table in front of her. She glanced at him, then at the papers, her curiosity quickly turning to shock as she read. Her face lost color as she skimmed through the pages. When she finished, she threw them back on the table and stood silently. "Well, she finally said. "Where did you get this?" "It's from my email at work. The modem broke and my email stayed on the screen, didn't it?" Kevin managed to speak calmly. "Yes. If it weren't for that, I probably never would have found out. You've been very good at keeping this affair a secret." Carrie said nothing more, took out her cell phone and started talking, her back to Kevin. "Kevin knows. It doesn't matter how. Yes, I'll call a cab and meet you there. Bye." Carrie turned slightly toward Kevin and said, "I'm leaving. I'm sorry you found out this way. I'll be back tomorrow for the rest of my things." She grabbed her travel bag and started to leave. Kevin, in disbelief, shouted, "That's it? No explanation? You're just sorry I found out this way?" Carrie replied, "What's there to explain? I've been with Bradley so much that being with him completely is just the next step. He's been good to me. You can't compete, Kevin. I'm sorry." Tears welled up in Kevin's eyes as he asked, "Is this about the money, the purse, the earrings, and other things?" Carrie hesitated. "Gifts are part of it. Bradley lives upscale, and I'm ready for that life." She went to the bedroom, staying there for 5 minutes while Kevin tried to collect himself. When she returned with a garment bag, he heard the cab honking outside. Without another word, she left. Kevin followed her, watching the cab driver load her luggage. She got in, glanced back at Kevin, and he thought she might be crying. Alone in the kitchen, Kevin wondered, what the hell just happened? The next day, Saturday, Kevin was still in shock. Carrie called around noon, saying she was coming to pick up the rest of her things with her father. When they arrived, Kevin sat quietly on the couch as they moved boxes. After a few minutes, Carrie's father, Joseph Kane, joined Kevin. They sat in silence until Kevin asked, "Did she tell you what's going on?" Joseph looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry, Kevin. She seems to have made up her mind. We don't understand why she'd leave you for her boss." Kevin replied, "I guess it's what he can give her. She didn't say she loved him or stopped loving me." Joseph asked, "Does it really matter?" Kevin thought and answered, "No. She's been with him for months. I can't forgive that, even if she wanted me to." They sat silently until Carrie emerged, saying, "I have everything I want. Do whatever you want with the rest." She had tears in her eyes as she carried a box outside. Her father followed with another. After they left, Kevin noticed some of Carrie's things still in the closet and drawers. He threw away her remaining clothes, makeup, and toiletries, erasing traces of her from the bedroom and bathroom. He spent the rest of the day lying on the bed, thinking about what he could have done and fantasizing about revenge. Eventually, he realized that although he was angry, he wasn't vengeful. He decided to focus on forgetting her, as difficult as that might be. The weekend passed in a blur for Kevin. He drank heavily, finishing all the beer he bought, trying to numb the pain of Carrie's betrayal. By Monday morning, he felt slightly better, coming to terms with the situation. On Tuesday, Kevin called Crosby and Knox to get a forwarding address for Carrie's mail. The receptionist said Carrie would email him the information. That evening, he received an email with Trey's 9th floor apartment address. Wednesday morning, Kevin was called into his office for a phone call. His bank informed him that his mortgage payment had defaulted. After a heated discussion, he discovered both his and Carrie's accounts were empty, with nearly $20,000 transferred out. Furious, Kevin went to Crosby and Knox, determined to confront Carrie and demand half the money back. He stormed into the office, bypassing the receptionist, and confronted Carrie loudly, accusing her of embezzlement. Bradley Knox III stepped out of his office briefly before retreating and locking the door. Kevin turned back to Carrie, demanding his money. She handed him an envelope, saying he could have the car, house, and furniture. Kevin opened the envelope as security guards approached, warning him to leave or face charges. He left, calling Carrie a money-hungry cow and yelling at Trey for hiding. In the parking lot, Kevin examined the envelope's contents. It was a spreadsheet detailing their assets and liabilities. If he kept the house, car, and furniture, and she took the cash, their split would be equal. He realized, however, that selling the house would incur additional costs, not reflected in the spreadsheet. Kevin went to his bank and arranged a line of credit to cover the mortgage and other expenses until his next paycheck. He hoped he could manage the financial burden until he sorted things out. Kevin always relied on their savings to handle unexpected expenses, but now he knew it would take months to regain control. The next 2 weeks were a blur of emotions. The day after visiting Crosby and Knox, he received a letter warning him to stay away from Carrie and Bradley Knox III, or face molestation charges and a restraining order. Furious, he almost responded, but decided against it. A week later, Carrie filed for divorce using the settlement terms from the spreadsheet. After spending $200 and losing more hours of wages, a lawyer advised him that fighting it would cost more than it was worth. When not dealing with legal notices, Kevin's life slowly improved. 3 weeks after Carrie left, he realized he needed to erase her memories from his home. He removed her makeup table, rearranged the bedroom furniture, and redecorated the bathroom. Feeling better, he then tackled the photos. He removed pictures of her from frames, stored photo albums containing their memories, and kept only photos with friends and family. One evening, while looking through old photos, he found a picture of himself with Carol Reese, his high school friend. Wondering about her, he checked the phone book but found no listings for her or her mother. Satisfied, he put the book aside. About 6 weeks after Carrie's departure, Kevin was interrupted from his late-night TV by a knock on the door. He was surprised to see it was Carrie's brother, Robert Kane. "Hello, Robert. Come on in. Didn't expect to see you," Kevin said, stepping back to let Carrie's older brother in. Robert patted Kevin on the shoulder and said, "What's up, Kevin? I tried calling you, but your number's not in service." "I switched to just using my cell phone to save money." Kevin led Robert to the living room. "Want a beer?" "Sure," Robert replied. Kevin returned with 2 open bottles, handing one to Robert. "So what brings you here?" "I wondered if I'd see you again after Carrie left," Kevin said. Robert shifted uncomfortably. "That's why I'm here. Carrie visited my wife 2 days ago. I told her what I thought about her cheating on you. Then she and Susan went to the kitchen to talk. I listened in from the garage." Kevin leaned forward. "What did she say? I'm still trying to understand why she left." "She admitted she dumped you because she thought you wouldn't forgive her. She said while Bradley's gifts and lifestyle were great, you were better in bed. She was planning to break up with him soon if you hadn't caught her." Kevin sighed. "Would've, could've, should've. It doesn't matter now. She knows it's over and regrets it, but she's still pushing for the divorce," Robert said. "I heard her and Trey use the term starter husband. It sounds like she saw you as a step up." Kevin gritted his teeth. "Isn't that wonderful? Don't fight with Susan over this, Robert. I need to talk to her without losing my temper. My wife has a lot to answer for." They talked for another half hour before Robert left, adding a few minor details. Kevin fell asleep later, still thinking about being a starter husband. The next day, Kevin stopped by a grocery store to start eating healthier. At the checkout, the cashier recognized him. "Aren't you Kevin Riley?" she asked. "Hi, Wendy. I didn't know you worked here." "It's been a while," Kevin replied. After paying, he asked, "You were friends with Carol Reese. Do you know what happened to her or her mother?" Wendy thought for a moment. "I heard she got married years ago. Her mother still lives in the same house, but remarried. Her last name is now Smith or something similar." "Thanks, Wendy," Kevin said, feeling a bit more at ease. Agreeing to meet for coffee sometime, Kevin and his old friend said their goodbyes. Returning home in a better mood, Kevin cooked a healthy dinner and went for a jog. Determined to make this his new routine, he embraced proper nutrition and regular exercise. After his jog, Kevin looked up Carol's mother's phone number and found it under Smithers. He called Mary Ann Smithers, who gave him Carol's number and mentioned that Carol was now a widow. Kevin noted Carol's address was in a low-income neighborhood and decided to call her soon. Over the next few days, Kevin's new lifestyle improved his mood, making him more positive at work. However, a short letter from Carrie disrupted his progress. The letter said, "I never thought of you as a starter husband," clearly influenced by Robert and Susan's conversation. Kevin replied, "Actions speak louder than words," but received no response. 3 months after Carrie left, Kevin received the final divorce papers. Surprised at how quickly Trey expedited the process, he celebrated with a single beer. He sent Carrie a final email. "You got what you wanted," and never heard back. Later that evening, Kevin decided to call Carol Jansen. When she answered, she was glad to hear from him. They spent an hour catching up. Carol shared that her husband, Frank Jansen, was liquidated in Iraq, leaving her a widow with a 4-year-old daughter, Chrissy. She lived on a survivor's pension but planned to return to work as a therapist once Chrissy started school. Kevin shared details about his divorce. As their conversation ended, he asked Carol if she'd like to get together for dinner or drinks. Carol hesitated, explaining she wasn't ready to date and was focused on her daughter. Kevin, disappointed, wished her well and hung up. Feeling rejected and dealing with the finality of his divorce, Kevin grabbed another beer and went to bed, reflecting on an emotionally difficult day. The next 2 months flew by. Kevin settled into a routine, avoiding new relationships until thoughts of Carrie faded. He still thought about her often, but it became less painful over time. Kevin had given up his landline and premium cable to save money and now read newspapers left in the lunchroom by coworkers. One morning, during a coffee break, a coworker handed him a newspaper with the headline, "One dead, one in critical condition." The article described a fatal accident involving Bradley Knox III and Carrie Riley. Bradley died, and Carrie was in critical condition, with booze suspected as a factor. After reading the article twice, Kevin tossed it back. "Can't say I'm sorry he's dead. I hope Carrie recovers, but I don't care enough to worry." His coworker commented on how hard Carrie's departure had hit him, to which Kevin responded, "Reading that article proved to me I can move on. I don't feel the need to rush to her bedside." The article marked a turning point for Kevin. He felt a weight lift and realized he could move on. Over the next few days, news confirmed Bradley's DUI and Carrie's critical condition. Kevin invited a secretary over for dinner, enjoying her company and feeling ready to move forward. 2 weeks after the accident, Robert Kane visited Kevin. They sat in the kitchen with beers. "What brings you here, Robert?" Kevin asked. "Just in the neighborhood. Sorry about Carrie's accident. How's she doing?" Robert explained Carrie's severe head injury and medication-induced coma. "It's hard on our parents. Thank goodness she wore her seatbelt. Bradley didn't, and he paid for it." Kevin suggested suing Bradley's estate. Robert sighed. "Dad and I talked about it. We'll see after she's off the medications and out of the coma if she comes out at all." Kevin expressed concern. "Tell your parents hello. I've moved on with my life. I even had my first date in years. I'm sorry she was hurt, but I won't let it affect me now." They talked about sports and work, avoiding the topic of Carrie until Robert left. As he was leaving, Robert said, "Susan and I are doing better. She saw the mess Carrie was in and decided she's happy to be with me. Sometimes the grass seems greener, but it's not." "Glad to hear that, Robert. It was probably Carrie who influenced Susan. Carrie forgot her obligations to our marriage. It could have been worse. We could have had kids." They shook hands, and Robert left. Another 6 weeks passed quickly for Kevin. He heard nothing about Carrie and assumed she was recovering. Kevin started dating again, going out about once a week. He spent a few nights with Jean, the receptionist from work, and enjoyed their time together, helping him feel ready to date again. One Thursday evening, Kevin returned from his run and heard the doorbell. He was surprised to see his former father-in-law. "Come in, Joseph. What brings you here?" "I can't stay. I'm on my way to the hospital. We want you to visit Carrie with us tomorrow at 2 p.m. She just arrived this week." Kevin looked puzzled. "Why do you need me to visit her? Our marriage has been over for a long time." "We'd just like you to meet us there. We'll talk then. I'm in a hurry." "See you tomorrow," Joseph said, hurrying back to his car. The next day, Kevin rearranged his schedule, left work early, and headed to the hospital, snacking on fruit as he drove. He arrived at 2:30 p.m. and went to Carrie's room, feeling a bit nervous. He hadn't seen her since his angry visit to her office and hadn't exchanged emails in months. Carrie was asleep, her hair now only 2 inches long from surgery, with a visible scar on her head. She had an IV and heart monitoring equipment connected to her. Kevin decided to wait for her parents, feeling a mix of emotions. After a couple of minutes, Carrie woke up and smiled at him. "Kevin, you're here. Where have you been? I've missed you these past 3 days." Taken aback, Kevin replied, "I've been home and at work." Confused, Carrie asked, "Why weren't you here when I woke up? Why would you go to work or stay home when I was here?" Kevin, feeling frustrated, said, "We're divorced. You left me for your lover. Why should I visit you? I'm only here because your parents asked me to come." Her reaction surprised Kevin as she shrieked and tried to move toward him, becoming extremely agitated. "No, no, no! What are you saying?" she cried, waving her arms and trying to free herself from the equipment. She ripped the IV out of her arm, causing the infusion pump and heart monitor to sound alarms. 2 nurses rushed in. One asked, "What did you do to her?" before restraining Carrie. Kevin replied, "I didn't do anything. I was just standing here." Carrie mumbled incoherently, trying to break free. The second nurse said, "I'll get the restraints and call the doctor for sedation," and left. Kevin walked out, shaking his head. "I think she's crazy." As he reached the elevator, Carrie's parents arrived. Before they could speak, they heard screams from Carrie's room and saw a nurse rushing in with restraints and a syringe. Carrie's mother asked, "You didn't talk to her, did you?" Kevin nodded and she exclaimed, "Good God, no!" rushing past him. Kevin, bewildered by the situation, watched for a moment before pressing the elevator button. As the doors closed, he saw Carrie's father looking for him. Kevin waved a farewell and left. Relieved to start the weekend early, Kevin drove home, reflecting on the strange events. Deciding to forget about it, he concluded that Carrie's psychological issues were best left to her parents and doctors. After showering, Kevin thought about calling Carol Jansen again. If she refused, he would call Jean from the office. Almost hanging up as the phone rang, he was surprised when Carol answered. "Hi, Carol. This is Kevin Riley. I hope I didn't catch you at a bad time." "No, I'm glad you called. I tried to contact you, but your number wasn't working. I wanted to apologize for being harsh last time." "I only use my cell now. No need to apologize. I was calling to see if you'd like to have dinner tonight or tomorrow." Carol hesitated. "I have plans with my mom and stepdad tomorrow, and I couldn't find a babysitter for Chrissy tonight." "Why not bring Chrissy with us? I'd love to meet her." Carol laughed. "Have you ever taken a 4-year-old to dinner? It limits restaurant choices. Let's pick a family-friendly place. I'd really like to take you out." Carol finally agreed. "There's a restaurant Chrissy likes with a great dessert bar. How about that?" "Perfect. I'll pick you up at 5. Just tell me where it is." Carol was excited. "Are you sure about taking Chrissy?" "Absolutely. If she's anything like her mother, it'll be a pleasure." Pleased with the plan, Kevin felt optimistic about the evening. They bantered until Carol had to get ready to leave. Kevin was thrilled, happier than he had been in a long time, and hoped their evening would be everything he envisioned. Later, lying in bed, Kevin replayed the details of his date with Carol and Chrissy. He smiled, pleased with how well it went. He looked forward to Sunday morning, having agreed to join them for church, not for the sermon, but to spend more time with Carol and Chrissy. He remembered picking Carol up and being struck by her beauty. Her short dark hair suited her, and she seemed taller and more confident. Chrissy, a miniature version of Carol, had dark hair and eyes. Kevin was initially worried about how Chrissy would react to him, but those fears vanished when she held his hand as they walked to the restaurant. Dinner went well, with plenty of conversation. Chrissy often interrupted, asking about words she didn't understand, which Kevin found amusing. After dinner, he and Chrissy prepared desserts together, solidifying their bond. After a pleasant evening, Kevin walked Carol and Chrissy to their apartment. Chrissy's need for her mother's attention prevented any goodnight kiss, but Kevin was content. On Sunday, after church and brunch at IHOP, Carol dropped Kevin off at his house. Chrissy reminded him of their zoo plans, and Kevin reassured her, promising not to forget. As he exited the car, he noticed his former in-laws at his door. Carrie's mother, Nancy, looked upset. "We need to talk to you. It's very important." Kevin invited them in for coffee. Once seated, Nancy explained, "Carrie is in a terrible state. Since your visit, she's been hysterical whenever the sedation wears off." Kevin asked, "What does this have to do with me?" Nancy replied, "We wanted you to meet with her neurologist first. He could explain her condition to you." Kevin apologized. "I'm sorry, I didn't know. But what difference does it make? I hardly said anything to her." Nancy whimpered, and her husband took her hand before she continued. "The problem is, you told her about her affair and the divorce. We wanted to avoid that until she got stronger." Kevin, puzzled, asked, "Why wouldn't I mention her affair and divorce? She can't think I'd forget. Trey's pass away doesn't mean I'll take her back." Joseph explained, Carrie had a severe head injury, damaging part of her temporal lobe, causing retrograde amnesia. Amnesia? But she recognized me and you both, Kevin said. She hasn't lost all her memory. She's missing the last year and a half and some earlier periods. She thinks you two recently returned from Cancun. The doctors believe she might recall more over time, but it's uncertain. So she doesn't remember the divorce or the affair? Lying to her isn't an option, and she won't get a free pass just because Trey is gone, Kevin responded. Joseph continued. We don't need to lie. Telling her falsehoods could create false memories. We need to give her small pieces of truth to help her fill in the gaps. So, I shouldn't have told her about the affair and divorce? Kevin asked. Not exactly. The doctor advised giving her bits of information gradually. You overloaded her, which might have triggered some memories, but we don't know how much. Nancy, regaining composure, said, She's not strong yet. Your news upset her. They're starting her on new medication, and we hope to discuss everything soon. Kevin felt ashamed. I'm sorry if I made things worse. I didn't know her condition. It's okay, Kevin. We hope you can help her by triggering her memories. We'd like your photo albums. The doctors say pictures might help. Kevin stood and looked out the window. I can't help with the albums. They're gone. I threw them out months ago. Nancy, puzzled, asked, What do you mean? I mean they're gone. I deleted the pictures I wanted and threw out the rest. I offered them to Carrie, but she wasn't interested. Joseph and Nancy were shocked. Kevin added, I have some other things that might help. Give me 15 minutes. Kevin returned with a stack of papers and a CD. Here are the letters I used to discover the affair. Maybe they'll help Carrie remember. He placed the stack in front of Nancy, who reached out to read them. Kevin quickly took them back. There are explicit passages. Consider yourself warned if you decide to read them. He added copies of all the legal letters, including the warning letter after his visit to Crosby and Knox. The last item was a CD labeled Cancun. Handing it to them, he said, These pictures are all I have left of our time together. They include photos from a nudist beach. Carrie should probably look at them alone. Carrie's mother folded the papers and CD. Kevin hoped it would help Carrie. They sat in silence before Nancy said, I don't think you'll want to talk to Carrie about everything that happened. Kevin replied, Not right now. If she wants to talk after reading this and realizing what she did, call me, and I might consider it. Her father asked hopefully, Could you consider starting over with her? Kevin shook his head. I can't risk that. She chose Trey's wealth over me. I can't believe a blow to the head changed that part of her. Even if it did, I won't take the chance. Joseph and Nancy understood, but thanked him for his willingness to talk later if needed. As they left, Carol and Chrissy arrived. Chrissy excitedly told the older couple, We're going to the zoo to see the elephants. The Canes greeted them warmly before driving away. Apologizing for not being ready, Kevin invited Carol and Chrissy inside while he changed. Soon, the happy trio headed to the zoo. Another month passed, and Kevin was happier than ever. He saw Carol and Chrissy weekly, though they couldn't turn their relationship into a lovemaking one due to Chrissy's presence. Carol suggested getting a babysitter for their next date, and Kevin eagerly agreed. On their date night, they watched a movie and danced at a bar, with Carol's mom babysitting Chrissy. Returning to Kevin's house, they enjoyed wine and danced to his CDs. After a few sweet kisses, Kevin picked up his cell phone. What are you doing? Carol asked, smiling. I'm starting to like this already. Kevin pressed a finger to her lips. Give me a minute. I want to talk to your babysitter. Carol, shocked, tried to grab the phone. Don't bother my mother. Why are you calling her? She stopped struggling when she heard Kevin say, Everything is fine, Mrs. Smithers. I was hoping Carol could stay a little later. Good. That sounds wonderful. Kevin paused, then said, I like the way you think, Marianne. I'll handle the sheets. Goodbye. Ending the call, Kevin laughed. Carol, confused, asked, What was that, Kevin? Kevin laughed and said, I'll tell you what we talked about. I think I'm going to really like your mom. She and I have always gotten along great. Carol, still confused, asked, What did she say? Kevin explained, Your stepfather Gary joined her at your apartment. Chrissy is fine and sleeping, and your mom and Gary are doing the same thing there that we were doing here. He had a doctor's appointment today and brought some blue pills. Your mom insists you stay here tonight because they're using your bed and don't have pajamas. Carol, shocked, said, My mom would never say that. What are you trying to pull? Kevin laughed. They were enjoying your wine, and Gary got your mom tipsy. She thinks we're good together and wants you to stay with me. She even said to make sure the sheets are changed in the morning. Carol, blushing, said, "I find it hard to believe my mom said that." Kevin kissed her and said, "Don't forget to change the linens in the morning. Your mom wants us to meet them for brunch at 11 a.m. at IHOP with Chrissy." At 2 p.m., Kevin lay on the couch, reminiscing about the wonderful evening with Carol. When they arrived at IHOP, Mary Ann, Gary, and Chrissy were already there. Both adults smiled, and Chrissy laughed and waved. Kevin joked, "Sorry we're late, I had to do some laundry," making Carol blush. During the meal, they joked about blue pills, sheets, and wine, confusing Chrissy. Later, in the parking lot, Kevin kissed Carol and Chrissy and hugged Mary Ann. He whispered, "Thank you for your suggestions. It was the push we needed." Mary Ann whispered back, "You two are good together. Gary and I took the opportunity to test his prescription." She laughed and walked to the car with Gary. Kevin waved as they drove away, smiling when his phone rang. Thinking it was Carol, he answered, "Hi, Kevin." Recognizing Joseph Kane's voice, Kevin replied, "Yes, it's me. What can I do for you, Joseph?" Joseph said, "Carrie wants to talk to you. She's staying with us, and asked if you could come over for coffee. She's afraid you'd hang up if she called." Surprised, Kevin hesitated. "I guess I could. I have no plans today. Should I come over now?" "We'd appreciate it." "Okay, I'll be right over." As he left, Kevin wondered what Carrie wanted to tell him. As Kevin walked into his former mother-in-law's house, he recalled all the pleasant times he'd had there. But this visit felt different. Carrie wasn't home yet, so Joseph and Nancy asked him to join them in the kitchen. After pouring coffee, Joseph said, "Nancy and I will let you and Carrie talk alone. We'll be in the living room." They left just as Carrie walked in and sat across from Kevin. Kevin was surprised by how good she looked. Her hair had grown back and was styled, but she seemed thinner and had dark circles under her eyes. She looked nervous, twisting a handkerchief in her hands. Kevin broke the ice. "You seem to be recovering well, Carrie." "Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate you coming on such short notice. I hope it wasn't inconvenient." "It's not a problem, Carrie. How's your memory? Are you starting to remember things?" She shook her head. "I only remember a few things from the last year and a half. At Crosby and Knox, the receptionist helped me recall some details, but it's been frustrating." Kevin asked, "Are there things you want me to help you remember?" Carrie smiled. "I have a few questions. Susan helped me understand some of what I did." She kept dabbing her eyes. Kevin said, "Ask me anything, I'll be honest." "I'm truly sorry for how I treated you. If I hadn't seen the letters and talked to others, I wouldn't believe I did those things." Kevin remained silent, unable to say it's okay after all he endured. Carrie continued, "I have vague memories of Bradley and none of our times together. I don't know what I saw in him. I visited his apartment, and if my clothes and belongings weren't there, I wouldn't believe I lived with him." After a pause, she asked, "How did you find out about my affair? I know it involved email, but I don't know how." Kevin explained how he discovered the first message, which led to others. She pulled out the stack of letters he had given her parents. He described how the mention of lingerie caught his attention, and the lies about the purse and earrings. Carrie looked horrified as he recounted her deceit. When he finished, they waited in silence while she wiped her eyes. When she finally composed herself, she said, "Forgive me for lying. I know it seems easy for me to say, but I truly mean it." A few minutes later, she asked, "Can you tell me about the letter where Bradley and I joked about my chauffeur?" Kevin sighed. "I wish you hadn't asked. You were joking about me. Every trip to the state capitol, I drove you to the airport and carried your luggage, including the expensive lingerie for him. You both thought it was funny. You even joked about getting me to call your hotel room early in the evening." He described how he always called around 9:45, proving she wasn't in the room before or after his calls. He was visibly upset, and Carrie started crying again. After a couple of minutes, she said, "I'm so sorry, Kevin. I can't understand how I could have done that." Kevin took a long sip of coffee. "It's all in the past now, Carrie. I still get upset, but I've had time to get over most of it." The conversation shifted to her medical condition. She explained she was having infrequent seizures, and doctors were trying different medications to control them. Emotionally, she couldn't handle work and had resigned from Crosby and Knox. Her parents were consulting an attorney to sue the insurance company and Bradley's estate for her injuries. After about 15 minutes of small talk, Kevin said it was time for him to leave. Carrie quickly asked, "Do you think we could go on a date? I know you'll probably never forgive the new Carrie who betrayed you, but I'm the old Carrie again. I don't remember cheating on you. Maybe if we went out to dinner or another date, you could fall in love with the old Carrie again someday." She spoke quickly, hoping to get it all out before he could interrupt. Kevin considered his response carefully. I'm sorry, Carrie. To me, there's no old or new Carrie. There's just the one I loved and then lost to Trey. It took a long time, but I've moved on. I know that's not what you want to hear, and I'm sorry. As he spoke, she began to cry quietly. When he got up to leave, she asked, Did you find someone else? He hesitated, unsure how his answer would affect her. I think so, Carrie. I think so. Is it the dark-haired woman with the little girl? Kevin was surprised. Yes, that's her. How did you know? My parents saw her at the house and told me, Carrie said, still wiping her eyes. Finally, she added, You deserve someone who will treat you better than I did. Then she turned and ran out of the room. Kevin left the room and was gone long before Carrie's parents realized he and Carrie were no longer in the kitchen. A month later, on a sunny Saturday afternoon in April, Gary and Kevin used a rented truck to move Carol and Chrissy from their apartment to Kevin's house. Things were going so well between them that they decided to see if they were meant to be together. Chrissy was excited to have a yard to play in and her own big room. Kevin's computer had been moved to a corner of the living room, and the room it was in was now freshly painted and decorated for a little girl. There was a large box in the garage with a child's play set and swing set waiting to be assembled. The three of them began to attend church regularly every Sunday, and soon Kevin noticed that Carrie's parents didn't attend the same church very often. He didn't give it much thought when, 4 months after Carol moved in with him, the minister announced that they were getting married this coming Saturday, and that anyone from the congregation was welcome to attend the wedding. They decided that a small, informal wedding was what they needed, and chose their church rather than City Hall for the ceremony. Chrissy was thrilled to be her mother's only flower girl, and that she would soon have a new father. Kevin was quick to let her know. Frank Jansen will always be your father, but I'll be happy to be your father too. He and Carol agreed that Chrissy would keep her father's last name, even if they made a legal adoption. Kevin insisted that the sacrifice Frank had made would not result in him losing his only child. Kevin and Carol spent an hour on the phone with Frank's parents, explaining their upcoming wedding and their plans to keep Chrissy and the Jansens' lives. The conversation ended with a promise to visit Chrissy's paternal grandparents for a week for the rest of the summer. Kevin couldn't wait to meet them, and they decided that this trip could be their honeymoon. Their simple wedding ceremony went off without a hitch, and friends and family gathered at the church. It was obvious to some that Carol was pregnant, and Chrissy made sure that everyone in the church knew that she was having twin brothers. It was hard to tell what Chrissy was more excited about, the impending arrival of 2 brothers, or the fact that Kevin was now her father. A week later, when Kevin was changing the exhaust system before a trip to visit the Jansens, he ran into his former brother-in-law, Robert Kane. He was surprised to learn that Robert and Susan had accompanied Carrie to the wedding the previous week. They had only stayed until the end of the service, as Carrie had found it much more difficult to be there than she had expected. Kevin, for his part, had a hard time understanding why Carrie would come to his wedding. Why did she want to be there? I know how upset she was when I told her about my affair with Carol. Seeing us get married must have kept her busy, he said. Now she's trying to get over you as you are over her, Robert replied. She thought that watching you get married would make it easier for her to move on with her life. It bothered her a lot, but she said she was glad she went. The men continued to chat until Robert said, I almost forgot to tell you, Carrie's claim against Bradley Knox's insurance company has been settled. Since it looks like she won't be able to work again, she managed to get almost $2 million. Part of the deal was getting his apartment, so that's where she lives now. We couldn't figure out why she wanted to do this, but she said she hopes living there will help her regain lost memories. Personally, I don't think that's likely. The doctors believe she has recovered everything possible. I'm afraid constant reminders of that idiot won't be good for her mental state considering he's dead. You're remarried, and she only remembers the good times with you. I think it's a mistake. 2 years flew by for Kevin and Carol. Their 2 sons, Frank and Kevin Jr., were joined by a younger sister, Chrissy. They named their daughter Marianne in honor of her grandmother. Their house was beginning to feel cramped for their growing family, and they were already debating whether to add an addition or buy a larger one. They hadn't made a decision yet, figuring they had another year before they would be forced to make a choice. It was a quiet Friday evening when the phone rang, and Carol picked it up. After a moment, she called Kevin to the phone. When he picked up, he was surprised to hear that Joseph Kane was calling. I had to call you, Kevin, so you wouldn't find out about this tomorrow from the paper. Carrie is dead. Robert found her when he went to see her today. Apparently she died sometime yesterday." The news took Kevin by surprise, and he lost control of himself for a moment. His reaction was enough for Carol to realize something was wrong, and she stepped forward and took his hand in hers. Her reassuring touch and concerned look brought him back to the present. He was happily at home with Carol and their children. His brief reaction was caused by a flash of long-forgotten memories of Carrie, memories he knew could never be completely erased. He smiled encouragingly at Carol, then said, "I'm sorry to hear that, Joseph. I would like to extend my sincere condolences to you, Nancy and Robert. Do you have any idea what happened to her?" Joseph hesitated before answering. "I'm afraid she liquidated herself. She left a note for my mother and me, but it's mostly personal things meant just for us. She wanted us to tell you that she never stopped loving you. Apparently she tried, but was never able to get rid of the memories of you. She also wanted you to know that it wasn't just you. She had ongoing health problems, both physical and mental, and they played a part in it too." "I didn't know she had so many problems. I haven't spoken to her since the day I came to your house to see her. I'm very sorry to hear that something like this happened. If there is anything I can do to help you or Nancy, please let me know." They exchanged a few more familiar phrases, and then the conversation ended. A few days later, Kevin and Carol attended a memorial service for Carrie, where they were able to express their personal condolences to her family. From Crosby and Knox, only her friend Anne, the receptionist, attended. A few months later, Kevin learned that he was the heir to $500,000 from Carrie's inheritance. Most of her estate had gone to her parents and brother. Kevin and Carol had long debated whether to keep the inheritance for themselves. Kevin worried that it would bring back constant memories of Carrie and their lives. In the end, they kept it and set up 4 trust funds for their children's education. The balance was used to buy a new, larger home. They found that they often remembered Carrie and her generosity, but it didn't give them any trouble.